Work rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start at £2.50. Call 0903 686 3232. Calls cost £2.50 plus your network access charge. Or post your name and number to GB19 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 4 p.m. on the 27th of February. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
GB News Breakfast. Every day from 6 a.m.
This may get you a little bit angry. Not that Alton Towers has cracked down on visitors with ADHD and anxiety for using disability fast lane passes, but the fact that they were around in the first place.
They say that demand for the Q-skip passes has surged. Well, not surprising.
No, well, the move comes as obviously we're seeing more diagnoses of ADHD and people claiming, crippling anxiety. Well, not even crippling anxiety, actually, because that's a different matter, but, claiming anxiety. The medication for ADHD has more than doubled since 2015, though it is worth pointing out for those people who really do have ADHD that getting hold of the medication is nigh on impossible at the moment.
I think queue-jumping is not the right word. This is about making a reasonable adjustment to help people feel more comfortable, to allow them to access areas and also parts of society that they may not otherwise be able to access. And I like to think that people don't do this to lie or to get ahead. I think they genuinely do need it. And I don't think we will be questioning this as much if it was a physical disability that we could see.
Alton Towers is a well-run commercial business, so I'll say something for them which they won't say because they look after their customers. But they've become aware that some people are gaming the system. And so they haven't banned people with anxiety. They've just tightened up the rules, number of people who can go with them and the border at which somebody can be accepted as having anxiety. Now, the problem is, let's get to the core issue. Anxiety is the modern day equivalent of, doctor, I've got a bad back, OK? You can get signed off with anxiety by just talking to a doctor down a Zoom screen for a few minutes and you're off.
GB News, the People's Channel.
A really important thing about GB News, and it's brought something completely different to the landscape.
The mainstream is all about keeping the status quo as it is, ticking along quite nicely. They don't want to ask difficult questions.
GB News exists because there is a desperate need for fearless journalism that puts the people first.
GB News came on the scene as a disruptor, and it has always been a disruptor ever since.
Journalism in this country has been a cosy world full of groupthink until now.
Well, the reality is that most British journalists are afraid. That's not GB News.
Journalism is journalism at the end of the day, and we're not here to serve any masters. Our masters are our audience.
We're here to talk about things in a way that have never been broadcast on British airwaves before.
Do not miss a moment on GB News.
The #1 news channel in the country.
Very good afternoon to you and a happy Friday. It's 3 p.m. Welcome to the Martin Daubney Show here on GB News, broadcasting live across the UK for you. All the very latest news, debate and analysis. As ever, all the way through until 6 p.m. We've got a cracking show and here's what's on today's menu. The Prime Minister that some call Never Hear Keir is in Munich today for a security conference, his 6th visit to Germany since becoming Prime Minister and his 46th foreign jaunt in total. Meanwhile, back in Blighty, a Corbynista union chief is backing Angela Rayner to be the leader, with Miss Rayner and Andy Burnham putting the boot into Labour's pubs plan last night in Liverpool, and the party taking a battering at local elections. Is a left-wing coup about to topple our wanderlust Prime Minister? 2 men responsible for a plot to murder as many Jews as possible in Manchester have been sentenced to life in jail. We'll have the full shocking story shortly. And Switzerland is to hold a referendum to cap spiralling immigration so the population there can never exceed 10 million. But with our own borders having more holes than a Swiss cheese, is it time for a similar referendum in Britain? Would you vote to cap Britain's population and also deport any immigrants who broke tough new rules? And the courts have waged war with the government by ruling that their ban on Palestine Action is unlawful. And what message does this send out? I'll speak to the government's former anti-terror advisor later in the programme. And the BBC is making hundreds of £millions worth of cuts in the face of substantial financial pressures, with endless complaints about woke programming and a $10 billion Trump lawsuit in the pipeline. Is it curtains for the crumbling corporation? And that's all coming up in your next hour. Jet Set Starmer, some people call him. Perhaps that's unfair, but it seems to me that Keir Starmer's favourite place is when he's not in the country. Every time it seems to be there's a domestic crisis, but let's face it, it's basically every week, maybe even every day at the moment, our Prime Minister takes off on another foreign jaunt. 46 trips in total, the man with more air miles than Sir Richard Branson. Is it really the way to run a country? But should we be careful what we wish for? The left are plotting. The former advisor to Jeremy Corbyn, now union chief, says the only way forward is tacking to the left. What will Britain look like under a socialist regime? Plus, how would you vote in a referendum to cap Britain's population? They're doing it in Switzerland in total defiance, I may add, of the European Union. They'll never let us have another referendum because they ignore them when they get the wrong result. But how would you vote in a referendum to cap Britain's population? Get in touch the usual ways. GBNews.com/your say is the way to do so. Or you can scan the QR code on your screens right now. But let's get stuck at your headlines now. And here's Sophia Wensler.
Martin, thank you and good afternoon. It's 3 minutes past 3. These are your headlines. Police have stopped arresting Palestine Action supporters despite a terror ban on the group remaining in force. It's after the High Court ruled the group's proscription was unlawful, a decision the government will appeal. The prescription began last summer, made being a member of the group or supporting it a criminal offence punishable by up to 14 years in prison. The Met Police, meanwhile, said it would focus on gathering evidence of potential offences where support for Palestine Action is expressed, rather than making arrests at the time. Meanwhile, 2 men responsible for a plot to murder as many Jews as possible in Manchester have been sentenced to life in jail after they were found guilty of preparing attacks between December 2023 and May 2024. Waleed Sadoui and Ammar Hussein were foiled by Greater Manchester Police and counter-terrorism as they planned to target Jewish schools, synagogues and shops. Both men were told they'd spend a minimum of 37 and 26 years respectively in jail by the judge at the Preston Crown Court. Waleed's brother Balil was sentenced to 6 years for failing to disclose the plot. Elsewhere, a man who repeatedly stabbed a uniformed British Army officer with 2 knives has been sentenced to life with a minimum term of 7 years and 162 days. Anthony Assan, who stabbed Lieutenant Colonel Mark Teaton outside Brompton Barracks in 2024, was told he's unlikely to ever be released back into the community. Mr Justice Picken says Assan will be detained in hospital for as long as necessary due to his ill mental health. In other news now, Sir Keir Starmer is attending the Munich Security Conference today, where the German Chancellor has warned that world order as we know it no longer exists. Global leaders will discuss the top issues facing the world in 2026, including the transatlantic alliance and Europe's security architecture. As he made his way to Germany, the US Secretary of State, Marco Rubio, warned Europe of a new era in geopolitics ahead of a major speech. Meanwhile, back in the UK, the Prime Minister has faced a Whitehall revolt over his decision to sack Britain's most senior civil servant. The Times is reporting that government officials refused to sign off on the move because it would cost the taxpayer £250,000 that could not be justified. Sir Keir Starmer overrode their concerns and agreed to the payout and sacked Sir Chris Wormold. Shadow Energy Secretary Claire Coutinho called out the Prime Minister's lack of control.
It's chaos. I mean, that's what it looks like. He is going through personnel like he's running through water. And at the moment, you know, he sacked his director of comms. He's not got a cabinet secretary. And it's not clear who is running the country.
Now, major hospitals have declared a critical incident after facing significant pressures on their services. Nottingham University Hospital's NHS Trust said their emergency departments are also dealing with overwhelming demand that has seen lengthy waits for patients. Bosses are urging members of the public only to attend A&E for life-threatening emergencies. And a Green Party councillor for East Sussex has revealed she'll be delivering Valentine's cards to asylum seekers and taking her grandchildren with her. Anne Cross said she and the children had painted the love gifts and would be taking them to the controversial Cobra camp this weekend. The Green Party councillor told GB News making cards to welcome people seeking asylum is a common activity for local people, school children and refugee charities. There is no evidence that children or women are at a higher risk from people seeking asylum than are other sections of our society. Those are the latest GB News headlines. Now it's back to Martin.
Thank you, Sophia. Yes, after yet another turbulent week for our Prime Minister Keir Starmer and the Labour government, the Prime Minister has jetted off to Munich, where he's set to meet with European allies, his chums there, amidst growing hostility from President Donald Trump and, of course, threat from Russia. Now, the trip will no doubt provide Sir Keir with some welcome respite from his many domestic troubles. Only yesterday was his Cabinet Secretary, Sir Chris Wormold, ousted from number 10, and, of course, just days after the departure, the resignation, call it what you like, of Morgan McSweeney as Starmer's Chief of Staff, following, of course, the ongoing stain and scandal surrounding Peter Mandelson and the Jeffrey Epstein paedophile scandal. But with the Prime Minister's position hanging by a thread, should Sir Keir Starmer really be prioritising once again foreign policy over the many, many troubles back here on British soil? Well, let's get now straight to Munich, where GBNews' chief political correspondent, Catherine Forster, is there on the ground for us. Catherine, welcome to the show. It's a pleasure to have your company. Now, of course, people are saying, well, hang on a minute, this is Sir Keir Starmer's 46th foreign trip. It's his 6th trip to Germany. Never hear Keir. Herr Starmer is in Germany once again. And, of course, back here, the left are plotting his downfall. Is it really the best use of the Prime Minister's time to be there in Munich?
Well, he would say it absolutely is. We know that he has landed. We expect him to arrive here. You can see as the cars pull up to go in over there. We're expecting Sir Keir Starmer in the next 20 minutes or so. But look, there's about 50 world leaders here. This is the biggest global security conference that there is. We've already had Marco Rubio, the US Secretary of State, meeting the German Chancellor Friedrich Merz. President Macron of France is here, President Zelensky of Ukraine, and the Prime Minister actually wasn't here last year, but last year the Munich Security Conference was a real moment that people remember, because at that, J.D. Vance, the newly elected Vice President of America, came here, and rather than talking about how the US would support allies in Europe to defend Ukraine, he laid into European leaders saying, you've let far too many people into your countries, it's destroying your culture, you're suppressing free speech. Now, he's not here today, but Marco Rubio, who is usually a little bit more diplomatic, is. But look, there are two main huge concerns here, and the overall picture, the Munich Security Conference, are saying that we are now living in a world of wrecking ball politics. The logo this year is an elephant with bits missing and the words under destruction. Yes, because of war in Europe, something we thought for decades that we had done with and would not see again. But also because of the United States under Donald Trump. He came in, he is changeable, to put it diplomatically, on allies, on NATO, on who he supports and what tariffs he may or may not put on them. So there's going to be a focus, yes, of course, on trying to work with and strengthen ties with America. There's a great amount of worry about Greenland. Donald Trump says he has to have it. He thinks that only America can defend it properly. Of course, Europe does not want to see sovereign territory given away or worse. So Marco Rubio will be meeting the Danish Prime Minister here. So absolutely, Martin, you will scoff, and I know you are doing. But really, is he expected not to be here when so many world leaders are not, at a time that international affairs are affecting all of us? As the PM said the other day, our energy bills are still up 40% higher than before Russia invaded Ukraine.
Catherine Forster, I never scoff. I never scoff at the Prime Minister's want-away global tour, as if, strike me down, Catherine Forster, I would never do any such thing. Excellent reporting as ever. Speak to you again at the top of the next hour. Catherine there, our woman in Munich. Now, tensions, of course, are continuing to grow within the left of the Labour Party as a Labour-affiliated union boss has called for Angela Rayner to replace Sir Keir Starmer, warning that the Prime Minister otherwise risks leading the party towards a Reform defeat or wipeout at the next general election. But you remember when Angela Rayner said this about Rishi Sunak? Well, she said there that this should be a general election. One would assume that Angela Rayner would be calling a general election if she was to take over from Sir Keir Starmer without there being it put to the people. But there's a huge problem. Look at this. Angela Rayner is currently predicted to lose her seat to Reform UK at the next general election in Ashton under Lyne. In fact, there's a 91% chance she'd lose her seat, so she wouldn't even get elected in. And guess what? If she had the chicken run down to Brighton and Hove, that's the real reason she bought a second home down there, she'd lose to the Green Party. Look, the data is there. They're on course to lose to the Greens, and that's before the Green Party threw the kitchen sink at that seat. The thesis to me is clear. This is a socialist fantasy. Angela Rayner, even if she is elected, will never be elected by the people. Is there a safe seat anywhere in the country for somebody like Angela Rayner now to plot her route to number 10? And I'm delighted now to be joined in the studio by the former Labour Party advisor, great friend of the show, Matthew Torbett. Matthew, welcome to the Westminster. Always an absolute pleasure to have your company. The party within itself seems to want to tack to the left. There's a union coming out today. A union, this is the General Secretary of the Transport Salaried Staffs Association, a former Jeremy Corbyn advisor, perhaps unsurprisingly, wants the party to go to the left. The trouble is the country doesn't seem to want to tack to the left. It seems to want the opposite. Or if it wants to go to the left, it wants the Green Party. Is this the problem for Labour? Whichever way they go, they're facing peril.
At the moment, yes, probably because of the current leader. Miriam's intervention isn't surprising. I suppose the timing is a little bit. I suppose there's wanting to be a gentle push to continue to keep the pressure on Keir Starmer. I come back to a little bit of... I mean, first of all, Angela Rayner's not a socialist, right? People forget she backed Andy Burnham in 2015. She wasn't a Jeremy Corbyn fan, but was thrust into the front bench because everyone resigned post-Brexit, and it was all Jeremy's fault as far as people were considered within the Parliamentary Labour Party. I do think there's something to be said about people feeling better. And I wonder if Angela Rayner could do that for people as someone who has a bit more of a personality, would lead with her beliefs because she has political beliefs rather than being led by advisors who will tell her what to believe, which is what I've always felt Keir Starmer was, somewhat of an empty vessel. And I think what people want, whether left or right at the moment in the country, is a bit of hope. And I think hope has felt very much extinguished. I think lots of people probably felt there was a bit of hope with Brexit. They hoped that something might give in this, something might change, and it seems to have been managed to decline since.
I wonder, though, if the problem the Labour Party has, the same as the Tories before, there are two parties. There are the pro-Brexit party and the wet Tories. The Labour Party is a left-wing rump, not much left after the purge by Sir Keir Starmer. And then we have their kind of tough talking in the red wall, but it's not delivering. And as a consequence, they're hemorrhaging votes to Reform, the hemorrhaging votes to the Green Party. There was a by-election last night that you're well aware of in Peterborough where the Labour vote collapsed by 31%. Collapsed. And I should add, the Conservative vote also collapsed by almost 12 percentage points. The Reform Party, from a standing start, getting over 29% of the vote, and the Green Party surging to 27%. Are we not seeing something completely different here, Matthew? That is a total reset to the political landscape. People are sick of the old guard. They voted for years and years and years of the baton being passed between the Reds and the Blues. Nothing ever changed. They don't listen to what the electorate tell them. They promise to cut immigration. They don't. They all raise taxes. Round and round we go, and people just want something different.
Yes, I think you can see that in by-elections up and down the country. I was sort of, it's impressive what Reform have done. I thought it was just as impressive what the Greens had done from when I lived in that area. There was no presence whatsoever, but clearly there is a lurch from people, no doubt, leaving the Labour Party, and maybe people that aren't political, similar to Reform, going, I feel like they may make a difference. I think we're probably seeing at the moment the death of the two-party system, and people feel... It was ironically Peter Mandelson that used to have the theory in the Labour Party that the left will have nowhere to go. They will always come home and vote Labour at a general election out of fear of the Tories getting in. I think if we continue to see results like this, potentially at the end of the month in the by-election, we will see actually that people do feel there is somewhere to go, and even if they are unsure whether they will win or not, they will place their vote where they want change.
But that poses an existential threat, not just for the Labour Party, perhaps the Conservatives. If people want to tack to the left, young people, been abandoned by successive governments, can't afford to buy a house. They've got university debt. They feel there's no hope. Is there any wonder they want to vote for radical change? The same people that voted for Jeremy Corbyn when he almost got in. Don't forget, he almost got in 2017 with the student loans wipe out. And Zach Polanski, whatever you say about him, if you're young and you're left-leaning and you feel the country is broken, he puts a compelling vision forward. And so, to the right, do Reform. Does that leave both of the main parties just thinking, well, if we go to the right, we're going to lose that way, and vice versa? It leaves them at a crossroads that could end in their expulsion.
I'd say it would serve parties right for committing to a pathway of managed decline rather than an ambitious agenda in which makes people's lives better. And tinkering, I mean, I said this back in 2015, tinkering is not enough at the moment, and it wasn't then, it isn't now. And what I would say is it's not just existential for political parties. I'd say it's existential for the country, because you're going to potentially get a Prime Minister elected on a 20-30% mandate. What sort of mandate is that when you're getting a third of voters, not even a third of the country?
Matthew Talbot, the last time you were in the studio, you said you were going to leave the Labour Party if Andy Burnham was blocked. He was blocked. You did leave the Labour Party. Are you still a Labour man at your heart? And if so, what would it take to come back? Would Angela Rayner coach you back into the fold, or do you think they just finished?
I like Angela. Angela is someone I would potentially help. Angela has to want it. Angela... obviously has baggage of her own. I think it's very conceivable she could end up leader of the Labour Party. Anyone I speak to back home who's working class feels like she became one of them when she went down there because of the tax issues. And I wonder if that is going to always be baggage to her winning a general election.
I think you're absolutely right. 40,000 reasons why she might be the wrong choice. Matthew Talbot, always a pleasure to have your company. Thank you very, very much. Now, still to come on today's show, Switzerland is to hold a referendum on a 10 million population cap amid a surge in immigration. I'll be asking, should the UK follow suit and hold a referendum on restricting our migration? And also next, Palestine Action wins a High Court challenge following its ban. What kind of message does that send out? This is GB News, Britain's #1 news channel.
Join me, Nana Akweer, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, he didn't say that, Dave.
I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
No matter the state it's in, this is our nation. Join me, Jacob Rees-Mogg, for a genuine, honest discussion on where we have been, where we are going, and where we are with the people who set the direction. Tune in to State of the Nation every Monday to Thursday, 8 to 9 o'clock. Only on GB News.
Westminster's full of talk, but out here, it's the real world.
Am I allowed to talk now?
No, that's it. This is where it matters, real people and real lives. That's what politics is all about.
The fact that Trump made a good start, no.
Straight answers, no spin, and just a couple of pints.
How many fingers have I got up?
About 10. So join me for Lee Anderson's Real World every Friday at 7 p.m, only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Britain deserves a newsroom that puts the facts and your voice first.
Well, and that's what you get on GB News. Lively debates,
lively conversation,
And we're not afraid to hold power to account.
and each other. So join me, Andrew Pierce.
And me, Miriam Gates, for Britain's Newsroom, weekdays from 9:30 on GB News.
Exciting news. Every Friday, my Patrick Christie's Tonight Show is going to have a twist to it. We're welcoming some special guests. You. That's right, on Fridays I'm going to be doing my show in front of a live studio audience because this show is about you and what you have to say. It's going to be the same big debates, same big topics, same big opinions, but every Friday night at 9 p.m. you are invited to come on down to Patrick Christie's Tonight to be a part of the action. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and my show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation,
No,
isn't it?
no,
Because the failure is...
You're deliberately avoiding my point. Nothing's held back,
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
and we do not shy away from the difficult stuff. Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood. So join me on Jubes & Co. weeknights at 6 p.m, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Mornings don't have to be tiresome, especially if you have the right company.
Wake up to news as it happens, opinion and debate, and of course, a little bit of entertainment too.
Because when the kettle's on, we're on.
That's Breakfast on GB News, a show worth waking up for.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We'll spread the news, you spread the word.
Welcome back. Your time is 3:22. You're with me, Alton Towers, on GB News. Now, two men responsible for a plot to murder as many Jews as possible in Manchester have today been sentenced to life in jail after they were found guilty of preparing attacks between December 2023 and May 2024. Now, Waleed Sadawi and Ammar Hussain were foiled by Greater Manchester Police and the counter-terrorism units as they planned to target Jewish schools, synagogues and shops. Now, both men were told they spend a minimum of 37 years and 26 years respectively in jail by the judge at Preston Crown Court. And Waleed's brother Bilal was sentenced to 6 years for failing to disclose the plot. And our national reporter Sophie Reaper has all the details on this shocking and astonishing case.
The faces of pure evil, with murder on their minds and plans to spread terror across Greater Manchester and beyond. Last year, Waleed Sadawi and Ammar Hussain were convicted of preparing to carry out acts of terrorism, as their plot of a mass gun attack on Jews in Manchester was uncovered. Bilal Sadawi, Waleed's brother, was also found guilty of failing to disclose the plans. An investigation carried out by Greater Manchester Police and counter-terrorism spanned more than 2 years, including the implementation of an undercover officer known as Farouk. His role was to develop a relationship with Waleed in order to gather evidence and learn about his plans.
I think the key point where we realised that this had the genuine potential to become an attack plan that could kill many people in Greater Manchester was when the undercover operative met Waleed Sadawi for the first time, which was on the 15th of February in a park in the Bolton area of Greater Manchester. And that real-world meeting and connection really made it clear that Waleed Sadawi had confidence in his relationship with the undercover operative and that was definitely going to pursue what were his original aims.
Farouk managed to uncover where Sadawi intended to attack, including schools, synagogues and shops. He also learned of the weapons the men planned to use, and at one stage Sadawi reportedly told the undercover officer, "Here in Manchester we have the biggest Jewish community. God willing, we will degrade and humiliate them in the worst way possible and hit them where it hurts." In 2024, Sadawi travelled to Dover alongside Hussain, believing they were about to receive a delivery of firearms and ammunition. According to GMP, he had also prepared for so-called martyrdom. He'd stashed cash around his house and had had a will drafted.
Go.
However, on the 8th of May 2024, a huge police sting operation saw Sadawi arrested and taken into custody. At Preston Crown Court last year, the three men stood trial, with the jury finding them guilty on all charges.
Well, an incredible case, and GBNews' national reporter Sophie Reaper is at Preston Crown Court for us. Sophie, an incredible case, true evil has been vanquished here, and hats off to Greater Manchester Police and counter-terrorism for nicking these two scumbags. Brings us up to speed.
Well, Martin, today here at Preston Crown Court, Waleed Sadawi and his brother Bilal appeared in the dock to receive their sentence. However, their co-defendant, Omar Hussein, refused to come up to the dock. And on this, the judge presiding over the case, Mr. Justice Wall, said his cowardice shows the full extent of his character. Now, this afternoon, we heard the sentencing remarks from the judge, and he outlined the plan of Waleed and Omar. He said that they were planning to kill as many Jews as possible. They were waiting for those of the Jewish faith to plan a march through Manchester, and then they were going to use AK-47 machine guns to open fire and kill as many as possible. They then intended to head to the Cheetham Hill area of Manchester, which has a high Jewish population. There they intended to attack the likes of synagogues, schools, nurseries, shuls, community centres. Now, Frank Ferguson, who's the head of the Special Crime and Counter-Terrorism Division on this case, has said this was a deeply disturbing plot inspired by extremist ideology. Had these terrorists succeeded, it would have led to mass murder and been one of the deadliest attacks on Jewish communities in this country. Terrorism is an attack on the very fabric of society. We will always use the law to protect communities from harm and relentlessly hold offenders to account, making sure they face the toughest legal consequences for their actions. Now, the Chief Constable of Greater Manchester Police, Sir Stephen Watson, has also commented not just on the threat to Jews in the area of Greater Manchester, but globally. Here's what he had to say.
Of course I'm concerned. We've seen a terrorist atrocity in Manchester at a synagogue on Yom Kippur. We've seen the events on Bondi Beach in Sydney. We are seeing the manifestation of hatred moving beyond our shores globally. And this is a threat to all of us. It is a threat to our Jewish communities, and if our Jewish communities are under threat, we are all under threat, and we all owe to our Jewish friends and neighbours a steadfast duty to stand with them in all circumstances, and that is certainly what we do as part of Greater Manchester Police, the counter-terrorism network and beyond.
Now, during those sentencing remarks this afternoon, Justice Wall addressed the men. Should say he addressed Waleed and Bilal Sadawi. Of course, Omar Hussein still not present for his sentencing. He addressed the men regardless, though, and he said, "You are anti-Semitic. You intended to target the Jewish community. In fact, your motivation ran deeper than that. I'm sure you were both fervent supporters of ISIS." He then went on to pass sentence on the men, Waleed Sadawi and Omar Hussein, for preparing terrorist offences. They received life imprisonment. Waleed with a minimum term of 37 years, Omar with a minimum of 26 years to serve. As for Waleed's brother Bilal, being found guilty of not disclosing information about terrorism, he received a minimum of 6 years plus 1 year to serve in the community. After that, all three men were taken away to begin serving their sentences in prison.
Sophie Reaper, excellent reporting. As ever, I expect nothing less from you. Thank you very, very much there for bringing us up to speed. Now, moving on to our next story. The High Court today has ruled that the ban of Palestine Action under terrorism legislation is unlawful. And the judges ruled that the ban must remain in place until the next hearing, and that's on the 20th of February. And the Home Secretary, Shabana Mahmood, expressed her disappointment at the decision, adding that the government will appeal the High Court's decision. Well, let's now speak with our political correspondent, Olivia Utley. Olivia, this was a decision put in place, of course, by the former Home Secretary, Yvette Cooper, been overruled by the court. Now the government's set to challenge it. Utter chaos.
It is absolute chaos, a headache that the government really does not need. Now, this is quite an extraordinary step that judges have taken this morning. They have said in their judgment that the ruling of the Palestine Action group as a terrorist organisation was disproportionate. They have essentially overruled what an elected Home Secretary has decided. Obviously, this has huge implications for the hundreds of people who have been arrested as members of the Palestine Action Group. They don't know where they stand now. The police have said that they will not arrest anyone associated with the Palestine Action Group for now until the government has launched its appeal. But it also has huge ramifications for the government. The fact that the Home Secretary's decision on this has been overturned in the courts suggests that in future, if Parliament wants to prescribe an organisation as a terror group, it will have a tough time doing so. Not only that, but you also have the idea that the courts are now interfering quite brazenly, you might say, in decisions made by elected politicians in Parliament. This wasn't just a government initiative. This was a plan that was signed off by the whole of Parliament. Now, Shabana Mahmood is trying to push quite controversial immigration reform through Parliament at the moment. There is a backlash from some of the Labour backbenchers, but I think now we could also expect to see a backlash in the courts too. Shabana Mahmood is going to fight this at the Royal Court of the Court of Appeal. It'll be fascinating to see what happens. In her judgment today, Dame Victoria Sharp said that the ruling of Palestine Action as a terrorist organisation was contravening the human rights enshrined in the ECHR of the members of the Palestine Action Group. It would be hard to see why that case would fall at the Court of Appeal, but Shabana Mahmood is very much hoping that it does.
And yet more chaos surrounding this entire notion, and later in the show I'll be joined by the government's former anti-terror czar to ask his thoughts on it. Olivia Utley, thank you very much for joining us on the show. Always a pleasure. Thank you. Now, loads more still to come between now and 4 p.m, including more bad news for the BBC as the corporation announces huge multi-£100 million cuts in the face of substantial financial pressures, with a £10 billion lawsuit on the horizon from Donald Trump. I'll be joined by the former BBC journalist Danny Kelly. Is this the BBC going woke and going broke? But first, here's your latest news headlines with Sophia Wensler.
Martin, thank you. Your headlines at 3:33. Two men responsible for a plot to murder as many Jews as possible in Manchester have been sentenced to life in jail after they were found guilty of preparing attacks between December 2023 and May 2024. Police have stopped arresting Palestine Action supporters despite a terror ban on the group remaining in force after the High Court ruled the group's proscription was unlawful, a decision the government will appeal. Sir Keir Starmer is attending the Munich Security Conference today, where the German Chancellor has warned that world order as we know it no longer exists. Officials will discuss the top issues facing the world in 2026, including the transatlantic alliance and Europe's security architecture. A man who repeatedly stabbed a uniformed British Army officer with 2 knives has been sentenced to life, with a minimum term of 7 years and 162 days. And Nottingham University Hospital's NHS Trust have declared a critical incident after facing significant pressures on their services. They said their emergency departments are also dealing with overwhelming demand, and that has seen lengthy waits for patients. Those are the headlines for now. I'll have more news for you at the top of the hour.
You can now watch GB News live across the United States of America and the world on Truth Plus. Scan the QR code to find out more, or visit gbnews.com/truth.
Hello again, I'm here with your GB News weather update coming to you from the Met Office. It's pretty wet out there for many of us at the moment, but something drier and sunnier is on the cards for tomorrow. Worth noting, as well as the sunnier weather though, we're going to see a slight drop in our temperatures. That's because we're going to get colder air feeding its way downwards from the north. Now that colder air is already across parts of Scotland and Northern Ireland, so a chilly feel here and a cold start to the night with often clear skies, but some wintry showers coming into some northern and eastern parts towards the north. Further south, cloudy to start the night with the rain then clearing away, allowing for clearer skies to develop. And with those clear skies and that colder air, for many, temperatures dropping below freezing just towards the south, just about staying above. But we could see temperatures in parts of Scotland getting as low as -10 Celsius. So very cold, frosty, icy start to the day for many of us tomorrow morning. Widespread ice, could be a bit more snow in some places as well, so that could cause some problems first thing. flooding, also an ice risk across Northern Ireland and much of England and Wales as well. But all the while there will be a lot of bright sunny weather to be had. Towards the south, less of an ice risk here. There could be some around, but even so there could be some frost in places as well. So plenty of sunshine on offer first thing tomorrow morning, perhaps just a bit more cloud towards the east. However, as we go through the day, some high-level clouds going to push its way in from the west, so that sunshine is going to turn a bit milky, a bit hazy perhaps, before some wet weather arrives from the west later on. Temperatures are going to be markedly down compared to of late, but with that sunshine, well, it's going to feel relatively pleasant. Many of us have been crying for some sunshine recently. Then as we go through the evening, as I mentioned, we have some wet and windy weather coming in, and that's going to bring some hill snow, particularly across northern and eastern parts as we go overnight into Sunday. More changeable weather to come as we go into next week. Whatever you're up to, enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you, Britain, for all of you who listen to GB News Radio.
Whether you're at home or on the go, you're making us Britain's news channel and Britain's radio station.
Good afternoon. This is the latest AI travel news from GBnews.com. Traffic restrictions are in place on the A92 Tay Road Bridge due to essential maintenance work. Meanwhile, high winds are reducing visibility on the A55 Britannia Bridge, prompting caution for drivers. The M6 northbound is facing significant delays between junctions 4 and 4A, and similar disruption is seen on the M62 eastbound at junction 20 due to accidents resulting in lane closures. Rail travellers are advised to expect disruptions on southern railways and cross-country services. For the most current travel updates, please visit gbnews.com.
Welcome back. It's 3:37. You're with me, Martin Daubney, on GB News. Now, there's more trouble at the BBC, more trouble at the Mill, as the corporation this time looks to make cuts of up to £600 million. That's right, 0.6 of a billion. Now, the outgoing Director General, Tim Davie, told staff that the broadcaster was not a protected species. And it's understood that the BBC is grappling with a declining number of households paying the licence fee. Well, the BBC is far from the only broadcaster grappling with financial pressure. And last year, we saw ITV dramatically cut its daytime output. But how much trouble is the BBC in as GB News continues to soar in the ratings? Well, let's now speak with the former BBC journalist, Danny Kelly. Danny, welcome to the show. The sums of money involved here, Danny, are simply eye-watering. If they're cutting hundreds of millions of pounds off their budget, it begs the question, how much dosh have they got?
They've got a load of dough, Martin, but it's interesting someone describing it as a protected species, because when I was at the BBC, I spent 17, 18 years there. It was very much the perception of staff that it was a protected species because you took for granted all of the licence fee. Now, hundreds of thousands of people have decided that the BBC is no longer relevant to them, and they've stopped paying the licence fee for various reasons. They may just feel that paying 180 quid every 12 months for something they ideologically or diametrically opposed to, then it just sounds unfair and unreasonable. But £600 million is a lot of dough they've got to find, mine.
314,000 Brits stopped paying a licence fee last year alone. Now, the BBC would like to think, oh, that's fragmenting media choices, people are watching things online or on demand, but there's more to it than that, Danny. People are sick of it. They're sick of having diversity and woke content shoved down their throat, anti-Trump content, provably, anti-Israel content, provably. Is this a case, actually, of the public making its choices and simply walking away from content they don't want anymore?
Well, they're voting with their feet, Martin. I was based regionally at the BBC in Birmingham, and the BBC in Birmingham was gripped by the woke mind virus in the aftermath of the George Floyd murder. And it went completely woke. And when I left the BBC, I used to have 1 in 12 people who in Birmingham listened to the radio, used to listen to my 3-hour show. The station as a whole now is 1 in 100. Now, let that just sink in. 1 in every 100 Brummies who listen to the radio, listen to the BBC local radio for Birmingham. If this was a commercial enterprise, it wouldn't be viable. In London, it's even worse. BBC Radio London, Martin, it's 1 in every 200 Londoners who listen to the radio, listen to BBC Radio London. You have to ask yourself, if they're throwing £110 million at local radio, What sort of value is the licence fee payer getting? And it's all to do, I can more or less give you the time, the date, the calendar time when people started to tune away from local radio. And it costs £112 million. It's interesting you mentioned Donald Trump, Martin. You know, Donald Trump was incredibly popular with my working class, overwhelmingly white, middle-aged, working class audience in Birmingham. And then overnight, more or less, he was persona non grata, the devil incarnate, and the audience have just abandoned them, not because of Trump, because of loads of various reasons. And now they reap what they sow. They're in big trouble.
Danny Kelly, the real reason they abandoned the audience, of course, is because you weren't there anymore. Don't give them any ideas, Danny. They might give you a call and drag you back onto the BBC. Hey, stranger things have happened. But on a serious point, you know, aren't we at a point now where the BBC used to be... You and I grew up at the BBC. Like, you trusted it. We switched it on. Angela Rippon, you know, Moira Stewart. No, we trusted what they said. It came, I believe, neutrally, apolitically. We suspected they'd always been left-leaning, but now it's naked. It's abundantly clear. They hate Nigel Farage. They hate Donald Trump. They hate, you know, anything to do with the Israel situation. Everywhere you look, it's like white people should feel ashamed. They change the casting to shoehorn in diversity, all of this stuff. And I think people now, Danny Kelly, are so awake to it. They see it for what it is.
I remember 2019 landslide for the Conservatives, Martin, and a pal of mine was doing the overnights. And when the exit poll was released, there were people openly weeping in the newsroom that the Conservatives had such a projected strong majority. And I've said this to you over the years, Martin, this bias will seep out on air. It will seep out. Everybody's human. Everybody has a bias. You have a bias. I have a bias. The problem with the BBC is that it's overwhelmingly a left-wing bias that is permitted to seep out on air. And I go back to an earlier statement. That's why it's lost connection with the working class man and woman.
You know, Danny, it's also worth pointing out there's a lot of stuff that people love about the BBC. You know, my kids, my missus, they love Traitors. I love Antiques Roadshow. Now, there is great stuff, but the thing is, right, if you compartmentalise it, why not get people, if they want, to pay for that kind of stuff, but don't force them to pay for everything. Let the market decide.
Well, you'll be appearing for evaluation on the Antiques Roadshow anytime soon, Martin. But the problem is that if you need to sustain the BBC in its current format, you need 22 million people to subscribe to £175 a year, because that's what the current subscription model looks like. And I don't think you'll get 22 million people who are going to pay £174.50 to continue to watch the BBC. There'll be mass job losses. And that's who I feel sorry for the most, Martin. My pals, my old colleagues at the BBC in Birmingham, who through no fault of their own have had to follow this woke edict. And unfortunately, they'll be the ones in the firing line.
OK, Danny Kelly, we'll have to leave it there. And I'd like to point out, I'm not an antique, I'm vintage. That's what I tell my kids, and I'm sticking to that line. Danny Kelly, it's always a pleasure to have your company. Thank you very, very much for joining us today. Danny Kelly, it was a pleasure to have your company. Now, a BBC spokesperson has given GB News this statement. Over the last 3 years, we've delivered more than £500 million worth of savings, much of which we've been able to reinvest into our output across the BBC. In a rapidly changing media market, we continue to face substantial financial pressures, and as a result, we expect to make further savings over the next 3 years of around 10% of our costs. Now, coming up next, a new law could ban vaping in cars carrying children. But where on earth does this war on smokers end? Because they're even thinking about banning ciggies outside hospitals and outside playgrounds. Seriously? Meanwhile, if you search some holiday sun, then here is the forecast for some of the top European destinations.
Ready to soak up that holiday sunshine?
Won't we need some cover?
No worries. All sorted.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News travel destinations forecast.
Having seen so much stormy weather across parts of Western Europe recently, finally a change is on the way. It's still windy this weekend in Spain, Portugal and across much of Italy. Spells of rain moving in here, reaching eventually parts of Greece and Croatia. But it is looking drier and brighter for much of Spain and Portugal despite that strong wind. And that steady improvement continues into next week. Still breezy with showers around, but not as stormy as it has been.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News travel destinations forecast.
No matter the state it's in, this is our nation. Join me, Jacob Rees-Mogg, for a genuine, honest discussion on where we have been, where we are going, and where we are with the people who set the direction. Tune in to State of the Nation every Monday to Thursday, 8 to 9 o'clock. Only on GB News.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
It does feel like a bit of a bonus Olympics, you know. I didn't necessarily believe I'd be still competing at 39, but obviously still able to do it. So looking forward to going into my last games, my 5th one, and give it my all once more for our nation.
What is it feels it more than anything else? I mean, imagine when I watch slalom, I'm thinking of the knees. Is that the thing? Because especially being the age or as young as you are, is that the thing that usually goes? Because everything looks pretty good at the moment, Dave.
No, I think it's more my hairline than anything. You know, the stress
is it the worry? Is that what it is?
On the old scalp. No, very fortunate that my body's really good. Sit here with no pain, so that's why I can still do it. That's why I can still train hard. And yeah, the mental side of it's tough, being away from the family, but otherwise, all good.
It's a real, I would imagine, this is as someone who's dabbled in ski. I love watching ski. Me and Eamon have spoken about it, from watching Ski Sunday with David Vine back in the day, and I remember Ingemar Stenmark, etc., doing the slalom. It's a very technical event, I would imagine. It's not like the downhill where you just fly down. It's both. You've got to cover both. So the adrenaline, I guess, can help, but being technical, you've got to be thinking the whole time.
Yeah, absolutely. And what people sometimes don't understand is we don't get to practice the course before. We have half an hour to inspect. No, we have half an hour to inspect 75 gates. We have to memorize all the terrain, all the different obstacles along the way. And then we have to race it full gas from the first time we push out the gate. So it's very mentally demanding. And I call it the intensity of focus. That has to be absolutely on point.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Britain deserves a newsroom that puts the facts and your voice first.
Well, and that's what you get on GB News. Lively debates, lively conversation.
And we're not afraid to hold power to account.
And each other. So join me, Andrew Pierce.
And me, Miriam Cates, for Britain's Newsroom, weekdays from 9:30 on GB News.
At GB News, we love to hear from you, our loyal community. So drop us a line at gbnews.com/yoursay. There you can talk to each other and also to the presenters live on air. gbnews.com/yoursay, because GB News is your channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back. Time is 3:48 with me, Martin Daubney, here on GB News on this Friday the 13th. Now it's time now for the Great British Giveaway and your chance to win a 10 grand luxury holiday for two and £30,000 in tax-free moolah. And here's Hayley Sparks with all the details.
We want you to boost your bank account with an incredible £30,000 in tax-free cash to spend however you like. You wouldn't need to treat yourself to a holiday, as we're also going to treat you to the perfect getaway too. There's also a terrific £10,000 to spend on a Riviera travel holiday of a lifetime for two. So whether you fancy a cruise or an escorted tour, you'll have over 30 worldwide destinations to choose from, which means you could be exploring the wonders of Egypt on a Nile River cruise, or find yourself on a grand tour of Japan, in New Zealand, even enjoying the wonders of India. But you've got to be in it to win it.
For another chance to win, text WIN to 63225. One entry costs £2.50 plus one standard network rate message, or text BONUS to 63225. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start at £2.50. Call 0903 686 3232. Calls cost £2.50 plus your network access charge, or post your name and number to GB19 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 4 p.m. on the 27th of February. The winner may be contacted live after all entry routes have closed. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
A holiday for two to Egypt. You could even take your mummy. Who writes this rubbish? Now, on to our next story. Vaping could be banned in cars. Vaping carrying children, as well as in playgrounds and even outside schools, as the government looks to crack down again on smokers. Now, the plans would also seek to ban smoking from outside of hospitals. At what point would it be easier just to ban smoking altogether? In fact, actually, maybe that's the Labour Party fun police's direction of travel. Well, let's now speak to the director of the Forest Smoking, and that is Simon Clark. Simon, welcome to the show. A pleasure to have your company. I think a lot of people watching this show will agree it's a bad idea to smoke a cigarette in a car if a child's present. They would also agree it's maybe, smoking in pubs, we've got a contained space and there's a provable passive smoking risk. But seriously, outside playgrounds, walking around outside hospitals, is this a step too far?
Well, we think it is. It's 10 years since the ban on smoking in cars carrying children was introduced. And we opposed that, not because we thought it was a clever thing to do. If somebody asked, we would always say, look, it's not very nice for your children who have no say in the matter if you light a cigarette in a car. But when it comes to vaping, there is simply no evidence that vapor is putting at risk any third party, and that includes children. And it's interesting that today a lot of the reports have been focusing on vaping in cars carrying children, because it's quite clear they want to introduce children into the equation in order to try and sway public opinion. But as you've said, there are a lot of other restrictions included in the consultation that the government has announced. And essentially, what they want to do is ban vaping everywhere where smoking is currently prohibited. Now, as I say, there's no evidence that passive vaping, a terrible term, is harmful to non-smokers. But they still want to restrict or ban it. And it makes no sense, because when you think that vaping has actually been a huge public health success story over the last 10, 15 years, the reality is all the evidence shows that the risks of vaping are far below that of smoking combustible tobacco, cigarettes, cigars, and all the rest of it.
And Simon, if I may interject, I think there's something else going on here. And I think you're exactly right to point out the use of children. We see it as well with online safety. We have a government that goes, we must protect children. And of course, we must. But it seems to be a wider kind of blunderbuss approach to restrict freedoms elsewhere for adults. For example, having a cigarette outside a hospital. I've made great friends doing that when I'm a father-to-be. It's like, you're having a fag with a dad-to-be, and I've been for a couple of pints with them. It's like, it's a part of the ritual. And it's like, where's the proof that having a cigarette outside in the fresh air is a danger to anybody? I don't get it.
No, I totally agree. And actually, smoking outside hospitals is one of the issues I feel most strongly about, because, of course, one understands that hospital management doesn't want to be seen to encourage people to smoke. I understand that. But where is their humanity? The reason that a lot of people smoke outside hospitals, they might be patients, they might be staff, they might be visitors. It's because hospitals can be very stressful environment for a lot of people.
Simon, I've been told we have to crack on, and you can go and have a little light up now. Thank you very much, Simon Clark, for joining us. Now, the Health Secretary, Wes Streeting, made the following statement. Second-hand smoke increases the risk of heart disease and lung cancer, and we want to protect children and the sick from harm. Prevention is better than cure. Now, stick with us, because after the break, much more debate, including should we have a referendum on capping our immigration? That's next.
Expect warm spells with the odd rude interruption. Box Boilers sponsors the weather on GB News.
Hello again, I'm here with your GB News weather update coming to you from the Met Office. It's pretty wet out there for many of us at the moment, but something drier and sunnier is on the cards for tomorrow. Worth noting, as well as the sunnier weather though, we're going to see a slight drop in our temperatures. That's because we're going to get colder air feeding its way downwards from the north. Now that colder air is already across parts of Scotland and Northern Ireland, so a chilly feel here and a cold start to the night with often clear skies, but some wintry showers coming into some northern and eastern parts towards the north. Further south, cloudy to start the night with the rain then clearing away, allowing for clearer skies to develop. And with those clear skies and that colder air, for many, temperatures dropping below freezing just towards the south, just about staying above. But we could see temperatures in parts of Scotland getting as low as -10 Celsius. So a very cold, frosty, icy start to the day for many of us tomorrow morning. Widespread ice, could be a bit more snow in some places as well, so that could cause some problems first thing. Also an ice risk across Northern Ireland and much of England and Wales as well. But all the while there will be a lot of bright, sunny weather to be had. Towards the south, less of an ice risk here. There could be some around, but even so, there could be some frost in places as well. So plenty of sunshine on offer first thing tomorrow morning, perhaps just a bit more cloud towards the east. However, as we go through the day, some high-level clouds going to push its way in from the west, so that sunshine is going to turn a bit milky, a bit hazy perhaps, before some wet weather arrives from the west later on. Temperatures are going to be markedly down compared to of late, but with that sunshine, well, it's going to feel relatively pleasant. Many of us have been crying for some sunshine recently. Then as we go through the evening, as I mentioned, we have some wet and windy weather coming in, and that's going to bring some hill snow, particularly across northern and eastern parts as we go overnight into Sunday. More changeable weather to come as we go into next week. Whatever you're up to, enjoy the rest of your day.
Expect warm spells with the odd rude interruption. Boxed Boiler sponsors the weather on GB News.
Thank you, Britain, for the thousands of you who are becoming friends of GB News every week.
You're not only watching and listening to our programmes, you're becoming part of them too.
Good afternoon. This is the latest AI travel news from GBNews.com. Traffic on the A9 southbound between Stockbridge and Queen Victoria is experiencing restrictions due to a recent road traffic collision. High winds are significantly affecting the A55 over Britannia Bridge, which will continue until further notice. On the M6 northbound between Junction 4 and Junction 4A, 2 lanes are closed following an accident, resulting in delays of approximately 30 minutes. Additionally, on the trains, Southern is facing major disruption between Hove and Worthing, while Avanti West Coast services are disrupted between Milton Keynes Central and Watford Junction. For more travel news, go to gbnews.com.
You could win cash and the ultimate holiday in our 2-part Great British Giveaway. Thanks to Riviera Travel, you could be jetting off on a £10,000 dream holiday for 2 people. With flights, transfers and luxury accommodation included, you'll get to choose the kind of holiday you want. Plus, we're going to give you £30,000 in tax-free cash.
For another chance to win, text WIN to 63225. One entry costs £2.50 plus 1 standard network rate message. Or text bonus to 63225. 5 entries cost £5 plus 1 standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start at £2.50. Call 0903 686 3232. Calls cost £2.50 plus your network access charge. Or post your name and number to GB19, PO Box 8690, Derby, DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 4 p.m. on the 27th of February. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Hi, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and my show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation,
no,
isn't it? Because the failure is...
You're deliberately avoiding my point. Nothing's held back.
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
And we do not shy away from the difficult stuff. Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood. So join me on Jubes & Co. weeknights at 6 p.m, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Mornings don't have to be tiresome, especially if you have the right company.
Wake up to news as it happens, opinion and debate, and of course, a little bit of entertainment too.
Because when the kettle's on, we're on.
That's Breakfast on GB News, a show worth waking up for.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We'll spread the news, you spread the word.
A very good afternoon to you and a happy Friday the 13th. It's 4 p.m. Welcome to the Martin Daubney Show here on GB News, broadcasting live across the UK. All the very latest news, debate and analysis all the way through until 6 p.m. What a cracking show. And here's what's on today's menu. The Prime Minister that some call Never Hear Keir is away again today, this time in Munich for a security conference. His 6th visit to Germany since becoming the Prime Minister and his 46th foreign jaunt since taking office. And meanwhile, back in Blighty, a Corbynista union chief is backing Angela Rayner to be the Labour Party's leader. Now, with Miss Rayner and Andy Burnham putting the boot into Labour's pubs plan last night in Liverpool, and the party taking a battering at local elections, is a left-wing coup about to topple our wandering Prime Minister. And Switzerland is to hold a referendum to cap spiralling immigration so the population there can never exceed 10 million. But with our own borders having more holes than a Swiss cheese, is it time for a similar referendum in Britain? Would you vote to cap our population? And while we're at it, deport any immigrants who broke tough new laws. And the courts have waged war with the government by ruling that their ban on Palestine Action is unlawful. What message does this send out to those protesting and also to Britain's Jewish community? I'll speak to the government's former anti-terror czar later in the programme. And homeless applications in Glasgow from people outside of Scotland, that's right, asylum seekers, have surged by more than 3,500%. What on earth is going on? Well, we think we know the answer to that. Glasgow is now the asylum capital of the United Kingdom. Now, that's all coming up in your next hour. Well, after another week from hell, the Prime Minister is in his favourite place today, another country. Do you ever get the feeling that whenever things go wrong on this side of the channel, which is most weeks, most days at the moment, our Prime Minister likes to go to another country to take the heat off? Perhaps he's more comfortable on the foreign stage. Is our Prime Minister perhaps a foreign minister in disguise? And as he's away, the mice play on the left. And that is Angela Rayner and a Corbynista union chief are backing a swing to the socialist left in the United Kingdom. The problem is with that, the electorate don't seem to want it. By-elections last night, the Labour Party getting a pasting in Peterborough, getting a kicking down on the coast in Felixstowe. The public seem to want change. Labour Party don't seem to be listening. And meanwhile, I'll examine why precisely Angela Rayner's route to number 10 is simply a fantasy. Get in touch, gbnews.com/your say is the way to do so. We can scan the QR code on your screens right now. But here's your headlines with Sophia Wensler.
Martin, thank you and good afternoon. It's just gone 4 o'clock. Your top stories this hour. Police have stopped arresting Palestine Action supporters despite a terror ban on the group remaining in force. It's after the High Court ruled the group's prescription was unlawful, a decision the government will appeal. The prescription, which began last summer, made being a member of the group or supporting it a criminal offence punishable by up to 14 years in prison. The Met Police, meanwhile, said it would focus on gathering evidence of potential offences where support for Palestine Action is expressed, rather than making arrests at the time. Now, 2 men responsible for a plot to murder as many Jews as possible in Manchester have been sentenced to life in jail after they were found guilty of preparing attacks between December 2023 and May 2024. Walid Sadawi and Ammar Hussein were foiled by Greater Manchester Police and counter-terrorism as they planned to target Jewish schools, synagogues and shops. Both men were told they'd spend a minimum of 37 and 26 years respectively in jail by the judge at the Preston Crown Court. Walid's brother Balil was sentenced to 6 years for failing to disclose the plot. Elsewhere, a man who repeatedly stabbed a uniformed British Army officer with 2 knives has been sentenced to life with a minimum term of 7 years and 162 days. Anthony Assan, who stabbed Lieutenant Colonel Mark Teaton outside Brompton Barracks back in 2024, was told he's unlikely to ever be released back into the community. Mr Justice Picken says Assan will be detained in hospital for as long as necessary due to his ill mental health. In other news now, Sir Keir Starmer is attending the Munich Security Conference today, where the German Chancellor has warned that the world order as we know it no longer exists. The Prime Minister arrived with the Foreign Secretary Yvette Cooper ahead of the summit, where global leaders will discuss the top issues facing the world in 2026, including the transatlantic alliance and Europe's security architecture. As he made his way to Germany, US Secretary of State Marco Rubio warned Europe of a new era in geopolitics ahead of a major speech. Meanwhile, back in the UK, the Prime Minister has faced a Whitehall revolt over his decision to sack Britain's most senior civil servant. The Times is reporting that government officials refused to sign off on the move because it would cost the taxpayer £250,000 that could not be justified. Sir Keir Starmer, though, overrode their concerns and agreed to the payout and sacked Sir Chris Wormald. Shadow Energy Secretary Claire Coutinho called out the Prime Minister's lack of control.
It's chaos. I mean, that's what it looks like. He is going through personnel like he's running through water. And at the moment, you know, he sacked his director of comms. He's not got a cabinet secretary, and it's not clear who is running the country.
And major hospitals have declared a critical incident after facing significant pressures on their services. Nottingham University Hospital's NHS Trust said their emergency departments are also dealing with overwhelming demand that has seen lengthy waits for patients. Bosses are urging members of the public only to attend A&E for life-threatening emergencies. Those are your latest GB News headlines. I'll have more for you in half an hour.
Thank you, Sophia. Now, after yet another turbulent and torrid week for Sir Keir Starmer's government, the Prime Minister has once again jetted off to Munich, where he's set to meet with European allies amidst growing hostility, of course, from President Trump and ongoing threats from Russia. Now, this trip will no doubt provide Sir Keir with some welcome respite from his domestic troubles. Only yesterday, his Cabinet Secretary, Sir Chris Wormald, was ousted from Number 10 just days after Morgan McSweeney resigned as Sir Keir Starmer's Chief of Staff, of course, following the ongoing Peter Mandelson and Jeffrey Epstein paedophile scandals. But the Prime Minister's position hanging by a thread. Should Sir Keir really be prioritising foreign policy over troubles back home? Well, I'm now joined by our woman in Munich. It's GB News' chief political correspondent, Catherine Forster. Catherine Forster, it seems to a lot of people back in Blighty that every time there's a political storm here, Sir Keir Starmer jet sets off abroad. He seems, has to be said, often more comfortable on the foreign stage than he does back here. It's been a terrible, torrid, turbulent week. And once again, the man that some people call Jet Set Starmer has cleared off to Germany.
Well, it certainly has been a terrible week, and certainly the Prime Minister, I think it is very clear, is much more comfortable on the international stage than he is at home, because at home he seems to have nothing but trouble. But he arrived here at the Munich Security Conference, rolled up here just in the last half hour or so. He's meeting with French President Emmanuel Macron, German Chancellor Merz. But look, there's about 50 world leaders here. The Munich Security Conference is the biggest event of its kind in the world, and at a time of real geopolitical uncertainty. I think he will feel that absolutely he has got to be here. Now, Chancellor Merz opened the conference with a speech in which he basically said that the old world order was crumbling and that Europe has to do much more to be independent, to stand on its own, to stop depending on America as we have for so long, because we didn't think we needed to spend as much as we had for many years, well, right up until the sort of mid-1980s. We had that peace dividend that is long and truly gone, and Friedrich Merz is warning that Europe must be stronger. And he is talking now, saying that he has begun Germany talks with France about a European nuclear deterrent. Remember, at the moment, France is the only EU country with nuclear weapons. We, of course, were the second until we left the EU. And Merz is urging leaders to repair and revive the transatlantic trust. Of course, transatlantic relations have been very badly frayed since Donald Trump came in. He is less supportive of Ukraine, much more keen on seeing Russia's side, so it would seem, and also, of course, been absolutely adamant that he wants Greenland, that he says he wants to own Greenland, no matter that it belongs to Denmark, who've said it's not for sale. So a focus here on Ukraine, a focus on the high north, Arctic security, trying to persuade Trump that Europe can manage the security in that region. John Healey, our Defence Secretary, who's also here, along with the Foreign Secretary, has pledged that we're going to double the number of Royal Marines training in Norway to 2,000 in the coming years. But the whole issue of NATO, that alliance that has kept us safe since the Second World War, really feels like it is under threat. We're clearly going to have to spend a lot more and
Catherine,
soon, and that is going to be very painful, very
Catherine,
painful.
Just want to interject. Does anybody care about this back in Britain? The reason I say this is that at the moment people are feeling like the country is just going down the toilet. People are feeling that the Prime Minister should be here sorting this, but he almost lost it. It was almost on the dole a couple of days ago. He almost lost his job. His politicians clapping like seals, giving his standing ovations, and like everyone knows that that's kind of transparent and see-through. And it just seems time and time again, Sir Keir Starmer goes to a conference abroad about climate change, the coalition of the willing, call it what you want. We all know that everybody at that conference there is dependent entirely on Donald Trump. They can puff their chests up all they like. Is this international posturing just pointless?
Well, we have been too dependent on America, it's very clear. And Europe has had a very nasty wake-up call, first when Russia invaded Ukraine, and then when Donald Trump came along and said, pay up, and basically, I don't know if I'm going to help you out or not. But look, the Prime Minister would say what happens in Ukraine is totally relevant to us, because when Russia invaded, our energy prices doubled. The government had to intervene, had to spend billions and billions of pounds subsidising our energy bills. They're still 40% higher than they were before Russia invaded Ukraine. So for people that think, what does it matter to me, what's happening in Ukraine, look at your energy bill. That is because of what is happening in Ukraine. And, we take our security for granted. We haven't needed to worry. I honestly, truly think those days are gone. When I've been in Estonia, when I've been in Poland, they take a very, very different view because they can see what potentially is coming their way.
Okay, Catherine Forster, thank you very much there, live from Munich for us. See you again shortly. Now, meanwhile, back in Blighty, as I said, the storm clouds continuing to gather over Downing Street. Tensions are continuing to grow within the political left as a Labour-affiliated union boss, a pro-Corbynista, has called for Angela Rayner to replace Sir Keir Starmer. Yes, Angela Rayner, the one who's still got a £40,000 tax bill hovering over her, to replace Sir Keir Starmer, warning that the Prime Minister otherwise risks leading the party towards a Reform defeat at the next election. But remember when Angela Rayner said this about Rishi Sunak? She said it's time for a general election now if a new leader is crowned and not kicked and not elected within the party. But let's also recall that one would assume that Angela Rayner would be calling a general election if she was to take over from Starmer. But there's another problem. Angela Rayner is predicted to lose her seat to Reform UK at the next general election. Let's get that on your screen. There it is. Ashton underline her seat. A 91% chance of losing to Reform. People in Ashton don't even want Angela Rayner as her elected representative, let alone as the Prime Minister. And what if Angela Rayner did that chicken run down to Brighton and Hove? That's the real reason that she bought a house down in that constituency, because she thinks if she goes down there, she can win the seat in Hove and Portslade, as you can see on your screen. it doesn't quite work out that way because the Green Party is expected to win that seat as the Labour Party feels the pinch on the political left. That's the point. You know, it's OK for the Labour Party to say that they think Angela Rayner should be the leader, but the numbers simply don't stack up. The Labour left might think Angela Rayner is the answer to their nightmare. The voters don't seem to agree. And here's the bigger question. Is there actually a safe seat left anywhere in the country for the Labour Party now as they head towards what seems to be an existential crisis? Well, let's now speak with the public affairs consultant and the commentator at CWE Communications, Dr. Stuart Thompson. Dr. Thompson, welcome to the show. It's a pleasure to have your company. Once again, the Labour Party seems to believe that the answer to all of their misery is to tack to the left. There's a problem. The electorate don't agree. When they're presented with that, they reject it. What planet are the Labour Party on?
Well, you're picking up statistics about Angela Rayner and polls 2.5 years away from a general election. And as Keir Starmer has shown this week, actually, people, the Labour Party, the Cabinet, are united behind Keir Starmer. So there isn't a vacancy. There isn't likely to be a vacancy, I'll say anytime soon, but sort of in the very near future. And you could see when the Prime Minister is, as your Catherine, in your previous piece there, Martin was talking about the security conference, he's getting on with the business of being Prime Minister, of going out there, of defending our country, of talking to international leaders, rather than just getting completely fixated on, well, leadership, who's coming, who's going, and polls 2.5 years away from a general election. There's plenty of time for him to turn those around.
Stuart, do you actually believe what you're saying? Do you actually believe? Do you actually believe that the Labour Party is united behind Sir Keir Starmer? They're clearly not. And for how long, if they are, or at least they pretend to be now? We've got a by-election due soon. We've got the May election. It's going to be a Starmageddon. Let's be frank, by-elections left, right and centre. The Labour Party are struggling to hold a single constituency across the country. They are plummeting at the ballot box. They're plummeting at the opinion poll. Sir Keir Starmer is the least popular Prime Minister in British history. How long can this charade carry on for?
You're talking about a general election that's 2.5 years away. There is lots of time for Keir Starmer to turn the around. Look, Margaret Thatcher was in exactly the same, well, I say near enough exactly the same position in the early 1980s. A challenger party that wasn't the Labour Party at the time, the main opposition. She was deeply, deeply unpopular at that point. The most unpopular Prime Minister ever. These polls seem to keep going down. But anyway, she was the most unpopular at that point. And look what she did in 1983. So, look, there is no complete, X equals Y equals Z. It doesn't work like that. Politics is politics, and people change their minds. And when reform come under pressure, when Nigel comes under pressure, come a general election, people might change their views. So, look, are there going to be difficult elections in between time? Absolutely. Is Keir Starmer going to be under continued pressure? Of course he is. He's the Prime Minister. But that does not mean that it collapses in 2 weeks' time after the Denton by-election. It does not mean that the whole thing collapses after the local elections. Is it going to be difficult? Absolutely. There is no getting away from that. But in the meantime, he's not working from home. He's out there in the international conferences defending this country's position.
Sure. I think it was Albert Einstein who said the definition of insanity is to repeat the same thing and expect a different outcome. Seriously, are you expecting to be able to go to the polls in May with Sir Keir Starmer as the leader of the Labour Party and then repeat the same thing at by-election after by-election all the way through to the general election and just hope there's some, miraculous intervention and the least popular Prime Minister in history suddenly becomes the most popular thing since sliced bread? I'm failing to comprehend how you even get to that point.
Well, look, Martin, he's out there being a Prime Minister in the international scene. You can't just say that if you have some bad election result, that automatically means that a leader goes. It doesn't work like that. The Cabinet have come behind him. The Labour Party, the Parliamentary Labour Party have come behind him. He spent this week, and look, it's been a terrible week, but rebuilding that side of things, rebuilding his, civil service. Again, you've mentioned that in the headlines there about a
He's
change.
done that by throwing, bodies overboard to try and keep the sharks at bay. How many bodies can go overboard before they think, actually, the problem is the captain of the ship?
But Martin, you either have a strong leader that has people around him that he can trust, that support him, etc. Hence,
do you think Keir Starmer is a strong leader?
I'm suggesting that on the one hand, you can't complain that he's a weak leader, and on the other hand, complain he's getting rid of people and putting people that he wants in the round, around him.
Because a weak leader will throw other people overboard and hope that people think that's decisive action. That's my point.
Well, he has shown decisive action. There is decisive action in this last week. Now, from a position of a huge challenge, as everybody recognises. Now, whether that will be enough in the longer term, look, we will wait and see. But we can't just make assumptions, X amount of years away from a general election that, that means the end of this Prime Minister. It just doesn't work like that.
OK, Dr. Stuart Thompson, I admire, if nothing else, your optimism. Thank you very much indeed for joining us. I appreciate your time today. Now, moving on, 2 men responsible for a plot to murder as many Jews as possible in Manchester have today been sentenced to life in jail after they were found guilty of preparing attacks between December 2023 and May 2024. Now, Walid Sadawi and Ammar Hussain were foiled by Greater Manchester Police and counter-terrorism as they planned to target Jewish schools, synagogues and shops. Now, both men were told they spend a minimum of 37 and 26 years, respectively, in jail by the judge at Preston Crown Court today. Walid's brother, Bilal, he was sentenced to 6 years for failing to disclose the plot, and our national reporter, Sophie Reaper, has the details of this truly shocking case.
Well, today here at Preston Crown Court, Walid Sadawi and his brother Bilal appeared in the dock to receive their sentencing. However, their co-defendant Ammar Hussain refused to appear in the dock to receive his sentence. And on this, the judge presiding over the case, Mr. Justice Wall, said his cowardice shows the full extent of his character. Now, in the sentencing remarks from the judge, we heard about the plot of Walid Sadawi and Ammar Hussain. He said they were waiting for those of the Jewish faith to organise a march in Manchester, and that they then planned to use AK-47 machine guns to attack and kill as many Jews as possible. They were then intending to make their way, if possible, to the Cheetham Hill area of Manchester, where there's a very large Jewish population. There, they were going to target places like synagogues and schools, nurseries and shuls and community centres, with the aim of killing as many of those of the Jewish faith as possible. Now, the Chief Constable of Greater Manchester Police, Stephen Watson, has commented not just on the threat to those of the Jewish faith in Manchester, but the global world-spread threat that Jews are facing right now. Here's what he had to say.
Of course I'm concerned. We've seen a terrorist atrocity in Manchester at a synagogue on Yom Kippur. We've seen the events on Bondi Beach in Sydney. We are seeing the manifestation of hatred moving beyond our shores globally. And this is a threat to all of us. It is a threat to our Jewish communities, and if our Jewish communities are under threat, we are all under threat, and we all owe to our Jewish friends and neighbours a steadfast duty to stand with them in all circumstances, and that is certainly what we do as part of Greater Manchester Police, the counter-terrorism network and beyond.
Now, during his sentencing remarks, Justice Wall addressed the men, saying, "You are anti-Semitic. You intended to target the Jewish community. Your motivation, in fact, ran deeper than that. I'm sure you were both fervent supporters of ISIS." Then he went on to pass sentence on the 3 men, Walid Sadawi and Ammar Hussain, receiving life in prison for the preparation of terrorist offences. Walid with a minimum of 37 years to serve, and Ammar with a minimum of 26 years. As for Walid's brother Bilal, he was found guilty of not disclosing information about terrorism, and he cried in the dock as he received a minimum of 6 years in custody, with a further 1 year to be served in the community. All 3 men were then taken away as they began their time in prison.
We've got a serious, serious problem in this country, haven't we? I mean, when you look at this case, their goal was to kill as many Jews as possible in synagogues, in schools, on British soil. What on earth is going on? After the Manchester synagogue attack where people were killed there, what on earth is going on in the northwest of England? It's utterly shocking. It's disgusting. When are our political class going to wake up to the fact we've got a serious, serious problem with Islamic radicalisation on British soil? How many more Jews need to die? How many more of these attacks need to be fought before we say there's something desperately, desperately wrong at the heart of this country? When will the political class have the guts, the gumption, the courage, the moral fibre to say enough is enough, to get into schools, to raid the mosques if necessary, to stamp the cancer of anti-Semitism out of this country? On the same day, we hear that Palestine Action, who've been prescribed as a terrorist organisation by the Home Secretary, the former Home Secretary Yvette Cooper, that's been overruled now by the Supreme Court. What message is that sending out to the British Jewish community who are leaving the country in their droves, living in fear? It's just a treacherous, treacherous position that we find ourselves in. And how many more of these cases are we going to report on here at GB News? I fear more. I sincerely do. Later in the programme, I'll be speaking to the government's former anti-terrorism czar for his thoughts on this. The time is upon us to act. The time is upon us to show some actual moral fibre. Still to come. Homeless applications in Glasgow from people outside of Scotland, well, that's asylum seekers. They've surged by an astonishing 3,500% as Glasgow becomes the asylum capital of the United Kingdom. And our very own Tony Maguire will be joining us to discuss what on earth is going on north of the border. And also next, when even Tony Blair is telling us we need to drill, baby drill, then surely we know net zero is a dead duck. We're discussing that after the break. This is GB News, Britain's #1 news channel.
No matter the state it's in, this is our nation. Join me, Jacob Rees-Mogg, for a genuine, honest discussion on where we have been, where we are going, and where we are with the people who set the direction. Tune in to State of the Nation every Monday to Thursday, 8 to 9 o'clock. Only on GB News.
Bold. They are under no illusion. Ray, are you a human trafficker? Boundless. I've had enough of the nonsense, and I'm not afraid to say it.
Don't get us on the BBC.
Every weeknight, I tear through the headlines. The smell of gasoline. Should we be worried about it? From Westminster madness to cultural war chaos. What we're going to do now, they are throwing things out the car as we speak. Get ready, Britain. Here we go. Patrick Christie's tonight, weeknights from 9 p.m, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Hi, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and my show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation,
no,
isn't it?
No,
because the failure is
you're deliberately avoiding my point. Nothing's held back.
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
And we do not shy away from the difficult stuff. Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood. So join me on Jubes and Kerr weeknights at 6 p.m, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Nana Akwe, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, he didn't say that, Dave.
I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Mornings don't have to be tiresome, especially if you have the right company.
Wake up to news as it happens, opinion and debate, and of course, a little bit of entertainment too.
Because when the kettle's on, we're on.
That's Breakfast on GB News, a show worth waking up for.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We'll spread the news, you spread the word.
Britain deserves a newsroom that puts the facts and your voice first.
Well, and that's what you get on GB News. Lively debates, lively conversation.
And we're not afraid to hold power to account.
And each other. So join me, Andrew Pierce.
And me, Miriam Gates, for Britain's Newsroom, weekdays from 9:30 on GB News.
Exciting news. Every Friday, my Patrick Christie's Tonight Show is going to have a twist to it. We're welcoming some special guests. You. That's right, on Fridays I'm going to be doing my show in front of a live studio audience because this show is about you and what you have to say. It's going to be the same big debates, same big topics, same big opinions, but every Friday night at 9 p.m. you are invited to come on down to Patrick Christie's Tonight to be a part of the action. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back. It's 4:29. You're with me, Martin Daubney, here on GB News. Now, Tony Blair has waded into the net zero debate, and it's bad news for his chum, Ed Miliband, because Blair says that the Energy Secretary's flagship policy is not fit for purpose, and he's urging Ed Miliband to abandon his crackdown on North Sea oil. Well, I'm joined now in the studio by the leader of the Climate Party, and that's Ed Gemmell. Ed, it's a pleasure to have your company. Welcome to Westminster. If even Tony Blair thinks net zero is a dead duck, surely it's time to wake up and smell the coffee. It's making us net poorer. It's time to drill, baby, drill.
I have to say, let's put it into context, the report first, and then maybe talk about the principles of it afterwards. I mean, look, the Tony Blair Institute has taken £257 million of donations from one of Trump's biggest supporters, so Larry Ellison. That's more than 50% of their entire income.
So you're saying they're being bought off by oil money?
Well, maybe, but it's a bit of a trend as well, because they've also had money coming in from Saudi Arabia and the USA, so two of the biggest petrostates as well in the world. And then you've seen Tony Blair, the first person announced to be on the board of peace for, when Donald Trump announced it and all that sort of thing. There seems to be a trend coming here, and if you're sort of smelling the coffee, as you say, or following the money, you may start to question why this report came out. And it came out, of course, at the same time as Donald Trump assaulted the legislation related to carbon emissions in America at the same time. It all sounds very, very fishy. And when you look at Tony Blair historically, Tony Blair effectively brought in the Climate Change Act in 2008. He was the one who commissioned, or it was commissioned under his watch, the Nick Stern report that looked at the economic upside, let's say, or the economic benefits of doing net zero early. So it's very, very strange to see this coming out now.
One climate that's changed is the climate in people's pockets. Energy bills are stratospheric, and whatever we say, green energy isn't the solution. A report was out yesterday saying that by the end of this decade, 2030, the end of this Labour term, electricity prices will be higher than they were during the war in Ukraine. The point being, it's going to cost billions and billions of pounds to electrify the grid. We don't need to electrify the grid if we use gas, if we use fossil fuels. It's cheap. Is abundant. We have our own supply. Tony Blair is saying the North Sea should be unlocked. But this government and the previous one slammed it with punishing taxation, which makes that impossible. That's the point. Green policies are making us poorer.
Right. The first thing, the report that came out yesterday, or not the report, the statement made actually by the British gas boss, and he actually talked about the fact that the prices would go up to the average prices during the Russian-Ukraine war.
Because of electrifying the grid, because of wind power?
Well, actually, he said the system costs and the maintenance costs. Now, that's the whole thing. That's the transmission of the electricity and the gas. He was talking about the transmission costs of all of that are going to go up, and he was very clear and said it's because we haven't invested for the last decades, a bit like the water companies as well. We haven't done the work we should have been doing to get stuff from one place to another. So I think that's the pretty crucial one on that part of it. Then when we look at where we're going forward, look, many projections suggesting in a decade you won't be able to make any money getting stuff out of the North Sea, because the way the costs are going up in the North Sea and the difficulty of it compared to potential costs worldwide, and that's without most people factoring in the fact that Venezuela now may be starting to pump a lot more oil and gas due to the investment of the Americans, assuming that happens. That will make it very, very difficult for Britain to make any money out of it at all. And the actual projections...
But perhaps we shouldn't be looking to make money out of North Sea oil. We should be looking to be energy sovereign. So we don't need to import it from around the world. So we don't need to rely on unreliable wind and unreliable solar power. That's the point. Standing on our own 2 feet.
Well, energy security, I think we all agree. So both you and I, in fact, probably everybody listening, wants a great level of energy security. We want food security as well. We want a lot of security coming in here. And we want our economics to work, our GDP to be going up. Now, to get energy security, briefly, let's look at history. If we had invested much heavier in tidal power, which I'm often saying when I get the opportunity for it 20 years ago, if we'd achieved 20 gigawatts of that, at the same time as if we'd done double the wind, double the solar and everything else up to now, not only would our bills be wildly lower now now, but we would have a much better level of energy security, particularly when you think about Russian or Chinese ships floating around in the seas, potentially cutting off supplies.
Your answer is more net zero. It's not delivering. People are getting poorer. Prices are going up.
It hasn't been. First thing is it's not net zero in most cases. That's actually increasing the prices. Okay, and one of the issues is the percentages within the energy bill of which partly come from net zero, but partly come from the wholesale price, which is the biggest problem. But more specifically, we aren't doing it right. Look, we've let China get out the blocks, get there, make stacks of money. It is doing everything: EVs, batteries, wind, solar,
with
and lots of other
massive
stuff.
carbon belching out. They pump more carbon out than we have since the Industrial Revolution, and we're offshoring our guilt. We're offshoring all of that. It doesn't make any difference to people's bills. I've been told we've got to move on, Ed.
Right.
I'm so sorry, mate. It's an absolute pleasure to have you in the studio as ever. Thank you very, very much indeed. Late for the news. Fascinating debate. Thank you, leader of the Climate Party, Ed Gamble. We'll continue this another time, my friend. Thank you very much indeed. Loads more still to come to now, 5 o'clock, including should the UK follow Switzerland and hold a referendum on capping the size of our population and halting immigration? I'll be discussing that after the break. But first, here's your headlines with Sophia Wensler.
Martin, thank you. Your headlines at 4:34. Police have stopped arresting Palestine Action supporters despite a terror ban on the group remaining in force. It's after the High Court ruled the group's proscription was unlawful, a decision the government will be appealing. 2 men responsible for a plot to murder as many Jews as possible in Manchester have been sentenced to life in jail after they were found guilty of preparing attacks between December 2023 and May 2024. Sir Keir Starmer is attending the Munich Security Conference today, where the German Chancellor has warned that the world order as we know it no longer exists. Officials will discuss the top issues facing the world in 2026, including the transatlantic alliance and Europe's security architecture. A man who repeatedly stabbed a uniformed British Army officer with 2 knives has been sentenced to life with a minimum term of 7 years and 162 days. And Nottingham University Hospital's NHS Trust have declared a critical incident after facing significant pressures on their services. They said their emergency departments are also dealing with overwhelming demand that has seen lengthy waits for patients. Those are your headlines for now. I'll have more news for you at the top of the hour.
You can now watch GB News live across the United States of America and the world on Truth Plus. Scan the QR code to find out more, or visit gbnews.com/truth.
Hello again, I'm here with your GB News weather update coming to you from the Met Office. It's pretty wet out there for many of us at the moment, but something drier and sunnier is on the cards for tomorrow. Worth noting, as well as the sunnier weather though, we're going to see a slight drop in our temperatures. That's because we're going to get colder air feeding its way downwards from the north. Now that colder air is already across parts of Scotland and Northern Ireland, so a chilly feel here and a cold start to the night with often clear skies but some wintry showers coming into some northern and eastern parts towards the north. Further south, cloudy to start the night with the rain then clearing away, allowing for clearer skies to develop. And with those clear skies and that colder air, for many, temperatures dropping below freezing just towards the south, just about staying above. But we could see temperatures in parts of Scotland getting as low as -10 Celsius. So very cold, frosty, icy start to the day for many of us tomorrow morning. Widespread ice, could be a bit more snow in some places as well, so that could cause some problems first thing. Also an ice risk across Northern Ireland and much of England and Wales as well. But all the while there will be a lot of bright sunny weather to be had. Towards the south, less of an ice risk here. There could be some around, but even so there could be some frost in places as well. So plenty of sunshine on offer first thing tomorrow morning, perhaps just a bit more cloud towards the east. However, as we go through the day, some high level clouds going to push its way in from the west, so that sunshine is going to turn a bit milky, a bit hazy perhaps, before some wet weather arrives from the west later on. Temperatures are going to be markedly down compared to of late, but with that sunshine, well, it's going to feel relatively pleasant. Many of us have been crying for some sunshine recently. Then as we go through the evening, as I mentioned, we have some wet and windy weather coming in, and that's going to bring some hill snow, particularly across northern and eastern parts as we go overnight into Sunday. More changeable weather to come as we go into next week. Whatever you're up to, enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you for making us Britain's #1 news channel.
Together, we have built something truly extraordinary.
Good afternoon. This is the latest AI travel news from GBnews.com. On the A9 southbound between Stockbridge and Queen Victoria, a collision is restricting the carriageway. The M4 westbound is slow between junction 23A at Mega and 26 at Malpas due to congestion. On the M25 clockwise in Kent, a collision is closing one of 4 lanes with normal conditions expected between 6:45 and 7 this evening. The A36 southbound is busy with delays easing just after 7. And on the trains, Southern has major disruption between Hove and Worthing. And Avanti West Coast is disrupted between Milton Keynes Central and Watford Junction. For more travel news, go to gbnews.com.
Welcome back. It's 20 to 5 on Friday the 13th. You with me, Martin Daubney, here on GB News. Now, as our immigration crisis completely shows no sign of easing up, Switzerland, meanwhile, is doing something positive about their own problem because the tiny country is going to hold a referendum in June on capping the country's population so it cannot ever exceed the 10 million mark. Now, Switzerland's population was below 7 million in the mid-1990s, but now it's soared above 9 million, and they're putting it to the people in June to say enough is enough. And at the moment, the majority of the population say yes, they do want to cap the country's population. Here's the question. Should we do the same thing in the United Kingdom? Let's have a debate now. I'm joined by the Labour Party activist Aisha Ali Khan. Aisha, it's always a pleasure to have your company. Referendums, they're great. The public get to decide. They listened last time, didn't they, with Brexit? No, they held a referendum and tried to cancel it, particularly the Labour Party leader, Sir Keir Starmer. But what a novel idea. A country, Switzerland, has decided to take back control and give power to the people. Hold a referendum, hold a cap, and it seems like they're going to go for it. Why can't we do the same here?
Hi, Martin. So I'm glad you brought up the Brexit referendum and not me. So referendums are a really interesting way to kind of capture what a country is thinking and feeling at any given time. Sometimes it works really well, sometimes it doesn't. And it's quite interesting that the Switzerland far-right party now have decided they're going to hold this referendum in June to see how people feel about implementing a 10 million people cap in Switzerland. So they're at 9.1 right now, and this would kick in when it gets to 9.5 million. People have been questioning and asking, could this work in the UK? And I don't think it would, because we've never had a cap where we've said, OK, if it gets to this many people, that's it, we're going to shut our borders. So that's one thing. And secondly, how would we shut those borders? We have one of the most porous coastlines in Europe in terms of people coming in on boats and so on. How would we man those entry points across England and the UK?
All right. Well, first of all, the Swiss People's Party, they wouldn't call themselves far right. They are right wing, but I guess anything is far right these days if you're to the right of Chairman Mao. But back to the serious point, Switzerland has written into its constitution the right to put it to the people on anything. When I was an MEP in Brussels, we were visited by a Swiss diplomat, and it's a wonderful system. They can literally ask the people about anything, and it's constitutionally binding. We don't have that here, of course. But on a serious point, you say, what can we do about our porous borders? Well, we could start with legal immigration. We could start with doing things such as, I don't know, Pakistan. Unless you take back your rape gang offenders, no more visas will be given out. We could say Somalia. We seem to have quite a lot of Somalians in social housing who aren't working. We could look at countries on a piece-by-piece basis and decide to do something about it, something positive to take back control. I put it to you, there's more chance of me being an astronaut than this government doing anything about that because they haven't got the guts.
So, Martin, this idea of punishing people, innocent people who've done nothing wrong on the back of people who have, I think that's kind of unfair. I think collective punishment
rapists is not that.
Isn't the answer. I agree. I think we should actually send people who've been convicted of rape, especially grooming gang offenders and perpetrators.
Pakistan won't take them back. Pakistan won't take back their rapists, so therefore say no more visas. That's not hurting innocent people. It's telling a regime, it's telling a country, play by the rules or do one.
Well, sadly, Martin, a lot of the people involved in these grooming gangs are British-born, so they have Pakistani heritage. Their parents or grandparents came to the UK, but they themselves are British-born, and a very small number are actually Pakistani nationals who've come to the UK.
But they won't take them back, Aisha. That's my point. Pakistan has said no. And our government needs to grow something between its legs and say, I'll tell you what then, no more foreign aid, no more visas given out until you play ball. That's my point. They won't give us a referendum, but when will they do something?
Well, I agree. We do definitely do something about the grooming gangs. I mean, even recently we've had people being arrested across Kirklees, historical cases of child sexual exploitation. So things are happening, albeit slowly, for many of the victims who've gone decades without justice. So, Martin, you and I are on the same page. I completely agree. And it's not just Pakistan. We've got countries like Afghanistan. We've got countries, Bangladesh, Kurdistan, and places like that, where perpetrators hail from that do need to take more responsibility, but the majority of the people that are involved are British-born.
Aisha, just want to look, let's put that to one side. Let's look at the general. If we were sensible about immigration, we might put a spreadsheet out and say this country seems to have a lot of sex offenders. Not everyone, but proportionately, say Afghanistan. And are they bringing in high skills? Are they paying in tax? Are they a net contributor? And if they're not, how about we have really strict visa impositions about how those countries are allowed in? If you can prove you can pay your way, fine. But if you can't, you're not allowed in. We've got to do something, or the country is going to die.
Well, I've always said that we need to include and expand, increase the numbers of people of visas that we're allowing. That allows us to ascertain who's coming, who's applying. We can check their applications. We can check them against various databases, criminal records, and so on. So we are much more in control of who's allowed through those borders and who isn't. Sadly, because of the limited number of visas that we're allowing, people are then turning to criminal gangs, human trafficking, and people that are helping them get across the boats. And then that's allowing people with very dubious backgrounds, criminal backgrounds, to enter the UK unchecked. And that's something that even I am saying we can't allow that to happen. We've got to put a stop to this. But one of the measures that we can take is to allow people to apply through the legal ways. They pay for the privilege, Martin. They can pay up to £1,000 per application. And then once they've gone through, and that money is ours, by the way, to keep. Once they've gone to the process, it's up to the people, the visa officials, to decide whether they're allowed to come in or not. We need different methods. The methods that we have right now are just not working.
On that, we can both agree. Aisha Ali Khan, always a pleasure, a great debate with you. Thanks for your company. I appreciate it. I really, really do. Thank you very much. We've got to do something. We have to do something about this, or otherwise I think we're all just going to lose our minds. Now, coming up next, we'll cross the north of the border to discuss why homeless applications in Glasgow from people outside Scotland have surged by more than 3,500%. Clue. It's about the fact we can't control our borders. If you're in search of some holiday sun, here's the forecast of some of the top European destinations.
Can't wait to get in that sea.
Lovely and warm.
Just like the feeling of having great travel insurance.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
Having seen so much stormy weather across parts of Western Europe recently, finally a change is on the way. It's still windy this weekend in Spain, Portugal and across much of Italy. Spells of rain moving in here, reaching eventually parts of Greece and Croatia. But it is looking drier and brighter for much of Spain and Portugal despite that strong wind. And that steady improvement continues into next week. Still breezy with showers around, but not as stormy as it has been.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
At GB News, we love to hear from you, our loyal community. So drop us a line at gbnews.com/yoursay. There you can talk to each other and also to the presenters live on air. gbnews.com/yoursay, because GB News is your channel, Britain's news channel.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Hello, Ben Leo from The Late Show Live on GB News. Do you remember when Billie Eilish said this at the Grammys?
No one is illegal on stolen land. Is all I want to say, sorry.
Well, Billie reckons there's no such thing as an illegal human because we're all on stolen land. So we're here in Billie's quite posh neighbourhood in Los Angeles. Let's go and see if she practiced what she preaches. Hopefully, if she sticks by her merits, she'll have no problem with me waltzing in, maybe making a cup of coffee or a tea. $3 million home. She's got some paddocks out the back with stables and horses. Maybe we can go for a horse ride. I'm sure she'd have no problem with it because she stood up on the stage at the Grammys, tens of thousands of people watching in the audience, millions around the world. The clip's gone viral. Here we go. Oh, nice little place. Bins are out. It's bin collection day. First of all, isn't that ironic? Massive gates keeping people out. I thought Billie didn't believe in borders. Well, according to the driveway, Billie does believe in borders. She believes in massive gates keeping people out. A couple of cameras up there as well. The lights are on, so somebody must be home. Let us in, please, Billie. We are here because this is stolen land, Billie, and we think we should be given access to your quite lovely $3 million mansion. And such is Billie's concern for security and privacy. It's surrounded by pretty decent security fencing. Very nice indeed. Massive security hedges as well. She's taken a lot of concern and time to make sure she's got some privacy, as you'd expect. Oh, there we go. At the $3 million Los Angeles pad of Billie Eilish, she reckons nobody's illegal because we're all on stolen land anyway, but when it comes to her own house here in LA, I think she's got different ideas.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Join me, Nana Akwe, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, he didn't say that, Dave. I'm so surprised. I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK.
We're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
It's 4:51 now. The Scottish Conservatives have branded Glasgow a magnet for asylum seekers. Figures from a Freedom of Information request show that homeless applications in Glasgow from people outside of Scotland have surged, get this, by more than 3,500%. Well, GB News' Scotland reporter Tony Maguire joins us now. Tony, Glasgow has become a magnet for asylum seekers because the Constitution there grants them privileged status. It's a nightmare. Tell us all about it.
Yeah, good afternoon, Martin. So essentially this is almost a continuation of the story that broke around April last year, where we learned that Glasgow City Council had announced that social cohesion was under attack here in Glasgow because 4,000 of Glasgow's 7,000 homeless beds were filled by refugees and asylum seekers. Well, today, upon releasing their housing paper ahead of May's election, the Scottish Conservatives included the results of a Freedom of Information request, which showed that since changing a subtle law in 2022, the applications for homelessness in Glasgow from outside of Scotland have gone up all the way by 3,500%. Now, I spoke to Megan Gallagher. She is the Shadow Housing Minister today, and this is what she had to say.
The FOI unearthed that there's been a 3,500% increase in the number of people coming to various communities in Scotland, but most particularly Glasgow, which has become the asylum capital of the UK. And what we are seeing is that this is because of SNP virtual signalling policies, such as the removal of the local connection back in 2022 that allows for many people to come to these particular communities, putting a lot of strain on the infrastructure and public services.
Now, back in November 2022, the SNP changed a law which stopped there needing to be a local connection required in order for someone to claim homelessness in a local authority such as Glasgow. So what we saw was in 2022-23, the number from outside of Scotland to use this system was 35, but in the combination of the next 3 years was over 4,400, and 76% of them come from outside the UK completely. So while the SNP-led Glasgow Council was asking for help from the UK government, perhaps a closer look needs to be taken at this law that the SNP changed back in 2022.
Tony Maguire, it's an incredible story, and I wonder if the electorate will have something to say about that in the May elections in Holyrood. Thank you, Tony Maguire, joining us there from Glasgow, and thanks to the school kids behind, give us a nice little wave. Don't go anywhere. I'll be joined by Layla Cunningham from the Reform Party about plans for a referendum on capping immigration. That's next.
Expect warm spells with the odd rude interruption. Boxed Boilers sponsors the weather on GB News.
Hello again, I'm here with your GB News weather update coming to you from the Met Office. It's pretty wet out there for many of us at the moment, but something drier and sunnier is on the cards for tomorrow. Worth noting, as well as the sunnier weather though, we're going to see a slight drop in our temperatures. That's because we're going to get colder air feeding its way downwards from the north. Now that colder air is already across parts of Scotland and Northern Ireland, so a chilly feel here and a cold start to the night with often clear skies but some wintry showers coming into some northern and eastern parts towards the north. Further south, cloudy to start the night with the rain then clearing away, allowing for clearer skies to develop. And with those clear skies and that colder air for many, temperatures dropping below freezing just towards the south, just about staying above. But we could see temperatures in parts of Scotland getting as low as -10 Celsius. So very cold, frosty, icy start to the day for many of us tomorrow morning. Widespread ice, could be a bit more snow in some places as well, so that could cause some problems first thing. Also an ice risk across Northern Ireland and much of England and Wales as well. But all the while there will be a lot of bright sunny weather to be had. Towards the south, less of an ice risk here. There could be some around, but even so there could be some frost in places as well. So plenty of sunshine on offer first thing tomorrow morning, perhaps just a bit more cloud towards the east. However, as we go through the day, some high level clouds going to push its way in from the west, so that sunshine is going to turn a bit milky, a bit hazy perhaps, before some wet weather arrives from the west later on. Temperatures are going to be markedly down compared to of late, but with that sunshine, well, it's going to feel relatively pleasant. Many of us have been crying for some sunshine recently. Then as we go through the evening, as I mentioned, we have some wet and windy weather coming in, and that's going to bring some hill snow, particularly across northern and eastern parts as we go overnight into Sunday. More changeable weather to come as we go into next week. Whatever you're up to, enjoy the rest of your day.
Expect warm spells with the odd rude interruption. Boxed Boilers sponsors the weather on GB News.
Thank you for making us Britain's #1 news channel. Together, we have built something truly extraordinary.
Good afternoon, this is the latest AI travel news from GBNews.com. On the A9 southbound, a road traffic collision restricts traffic between Stockbridge and Queen Victoria. On the M4 westbound, expect heavy congestion from junction 23A at Mega to junction 26 at Malpass. Northamptonshire's M25 clockwise has a crash between junction 19 and junction 20, with one lane closed and delays building. Also on the A36 southbound, slow traffic exists between the A360 and the A338. And on the trains, Southern has disruption between Hove and Worthing, and Avanti West Coast is disrupted between Milton Keynes Central and Watford Junction. For more travel news, go to gbnews.com.
We want you to boost your bank account with an incredible £30,000 in tax-free cash to spend however you like.
There's also a terrific £10,000 to spend on a Riviera travel holiday of a lifetime for two. So whether you fancy a cruise or an escorted tour, you'll have over 30 worldwide destinations to choose from.
For another chance to win, text WIN to 63225. One entry costs £2.50 plus one standard network rate message. Or text BONUS to 63225. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start at £2.50. Call 0903 686 3232. Calls cost £2.50 plus your network access charge. Or post your name and number to GB19 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 4 p.m. on the 27th of February. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
I'm Michelle Dewberry, this is Jubes & Co with you.
Hello everyone, Patrick Christie is here. GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Access the stories that matter to you. Take the GB News family with you on any device. And as long as you have an internet connection, tune in to GB News anywhere on the planet or beyond. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Mornings don't have to be tiresome, especially if you have the right company.
Wake up to news as it happens, opinion and debate, and of course, a little bit of entertainment too.
Because when the kettle's on, we're on.
That's Breakfast on GB News, a show worth waking up for.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We'll spread the news, you spread the word.
A very, very good afternoon to you and a happy Friday the 13th. It's 5 p.m. Welcome to the Martin Daubney Show here on GB News, broadcasting live across the UK. We've got all the very latest news, debate and analysis for you all the way through until 6 p.m. Got a corking show and here's what's on your menu. The Prime Minister that some call Never Hear Keir is in Munich today for a security conference. His 6th visit to Germany since becoming Prime Minister and his 46th foreign jaunt in total. Meanwhile, back in Blighty, a Corbynista union chief is backing Angela Rayner for the leader, with Miss Rayner and Andy Burnham putting the boot into Labour's pubs plan. And Andy Burnham has just announced the compulsory purchase of private homes, plus the party taking a battering at local elections is a left-wing coup about to topple our wandering Prime Minister. And the courts have waged war with the government by ruling their ban on Palestine Action is unlawful. What message does this send out to Britain's Jewish community? I'll speak to the government's former anti-terror czar later in the show. Suella Braverman has told GB News she'll be happy if Nigel Farage pursued socialist-style policies such as buying British steel. In a short moment's time, I'll be joined by Reform's Layla Cunningham to see what she has to say about this. And the Labour government is hoping Britain's youth will dig them out of a hole. Yes, their bid to give 16-year-olds the vote is now officially underway. But should people that young be allowed to decide about our country's future when they're not even old enough to drive a car? And who's to say they'd even vote for the Labour Party anyway? Perhaps they choose the Greens or Reform UK. And that's all coming up in your next hour. Well, to show, it's a pleasure to have your company. Sir Keir Starmer on his 46th foreign trip abroad. Is it me or is it you? Whenever there's a crisis in Britain, let's face it, at the moment, that's every week or every day by the feel of it, Sir Keir Starmer seems to trot off abroad. Now, I know it's an important security function in Munich, but the country's falling apart. Sir Keir Starmer was almost on the dole this week. His ministers stood up clapping like seals, and like in North Korea, if you stop clapping, you might be the one to go off the end of Sir Keir Starmer's gangplank, because the gangplank is putting bodies into the sea. Civil servants, comms advisors, but really, is it the captain of the ship? That's the problem. And is the taste of the future a socialist version of Britain? Angela Rayner on manoeuvres, Corbyn-led unions on manoeuvres. Andy Burnham just announced the compulsory purchase of your home if a Labour Party gets into power, perhaps if the local authority decides that private landlords' houses aren't up to scratch. This is pure communism. It could be coming to our country. Get in touch, gbnews.com/your say is the way to do so, or you can use the QR code on your screens now. Leda Cunningham is out there. You'll have her in a moment's time, but for now, here's Sophia Wenzel with the headlines.
Martin, thank you and good afternoon. It's 3 minutes past 5. These are your headlines. Sir Keir Starmer is attending the Munich Security Conference today, where the German Chancellor has warned that world order as we know it no longer exists. The Prime Minister arrived with the Foreign Secretary Yvette Cooper ahead of the summit, where global leaders will discuss the top issues facing the world in 2026, including the Transatlantic Alliance and Europe's security architecture. And as he made his way to Germany, US Secretary of State Marco Rubio warned Europe of a new era in geopolitics. That's ahead of a major speech. Police have stopped arresting Palestine Action supporters despite a terror ban on the group remaining in force. It's after the High Court ruled the group's proscription was unlawful, a decision the government will appeal. The prescription, which began last summer, made being a member of the group or supporting it a criminal offence punishable by up to 14 years in prison. The Met Police, meanwhile, said it would focus on gathering evidence of potential offences where support for Palestine Action is expressed, rather than making arrests at the time. Now, 2 men responsible for a plot to murder as many Jews as possible in Manchester have been sentenced to life in jail after they were found guilty of preparing attacks between December 2023 and May 2024. Waleed Sadawi and Amal Hussein were foiled by Greater Manchester Police and counter-terrorism as they planned to target Jewish schools, synagogues and shops. Both men were told they'd spend a minimum of 37 and 26 years respectively in jail by the judge at Preston Crown Court. Waleed's brother Balil was sentenced to 6 years for failing to disclose the plot. Greater Manchester Police Assistant Chief Constable Robert Potts delivered a statement.
Waleed Sadawi and Amar Hussein intended to target members of the Jewish community in an evil act born out of hatred. If they had been successful, then what would have followed would have been devastating and potentially one of the deadliest terrorist attacks to ever take place on UK soil.
Elsewhere, a man who repeatedly stabbed a uniformed British Army officer with 2 knives has been sentenced to life with a minimum term of 7 years and 162 days. Anthony Assan, who stabbed Lieutenant Colonel Mark Teaton outside Brompton Barracks in 2024, was told he's unlikely to ever be released back into the community. Mr Justice Picken says Assan will be detained in hospital for as long as necessary due to his ill mental health. In other news now, major hospitals have declared a critical incident after facing significant pressures on their services. Nottingham University Hospital's NHS Trust said their emergency departments are also dealing with overwhelming demand that has seen lengthy waits for patients. Bosses are urging members of the public only to attend A&E for life-threatening emergencies. And a 4-day health alert for cold weather has begun in England amid an Arctic blast of cold air, as the Met Office warned of snow and ice in some areas. The alert covers central and northern areas and runs until 8 a.m. on Monday. Today is set to feel much colder for the UK, with temperatures plummeting overnight, bringing the first widespread frost of February. Those are the latest GB News headlines. I'll have more for you in half an hour.
Thank you, Sophia. Now, after yet another turbulent week for Sir Keir Starmer's government and the Prime Minister himself, the Prime Minister has, you've guessed it, he's jetted off abroad, this time to Munich, where he's set to meet European allies amidst growing hostility from President Donald Trump and the threats from Russia. Now, this trip will no doubt provide Sir Keir Starmer with some much-needed and welcome respite from his domestic troubles. Only yesterday, his Cabinet Secretary, Sir Chris Warmold, was outed from Number 10, the latest body to be thrown overboard just days after the resignation of Morgan McSweeney. And now this, of course, followed the ongoing Peter Mandelson and the Jeffrey Epstein paedophilia scandal. It's been a nightmare, a stinker, a vintage week for the Prime Minister. His position now hanging by a thread. So should Sir Keir really be prioritising foreign policy over troubles back here in Blighty? Let's cross now to our woman in Munich. This GB News' chief political correspondent, Catherine Forster. Catherine, welcome to the show. And again, back here in Blighty, the left are on manoeuvres. Andy Burnham just announcing this afternoon the compulsory purchase of privately owned housing to put it step back into state control. The government here, the Labour opposition people, seems to be tacking dramatically to the left. And there's a feeling that when the country is in trouble, Sir Keir Starmer's first instinct is always to get on a jet and to go abroad. This time, he's in Munich. What's he up to?
Yes, whatever you think of Sir Keir Starmer and the current state of the government, if he gets removed, the government is likely to go to the left, for sure. So perhaps think about that, those people that think they'd be better off getting shot of him. Angela Rayner and Andy Burnham, just two people who want his job. But look, he's not sat at home licking his wounds. He's here in Munich. Yes, of course, he is much more comfortable abroad than at home. We know that. He's been, I think, 6 times round the world. But he would argue that he absolutely has to be here because there's about 50 world leaders here. It is the global security conference, and there's all sorts of very ominous warnings already coming out of it. Chancellor Merz of Germany saying that the old global order is crumbling. Marco Rubio, the US Secretary of State, talking about a new era. And the Munich Security Conference itself has said that the world is now into a wrecking ball politics. So the Prime Minister arrived here in the last hour or so. He's already had what they call a Berlin format meeting on Ukraine with about 10 European countries and the United States. For people that don't think Ukraine matters to them back at home, look at your energy bills. They're still 40% higher than when Russia invaded. Now Sir Keir Starmer is having a meeting with President Macron of France and Chancellor Merz of Germany. Then he'll be having individual meetings too. He'll be making a big speech tomorrow, and what we expect and what we're hearing generally here is that Europe has got to step up. We cannot continue depending on America. We've learned since Donald Trump came in that those days are over. He's made it very clear he expects NATO allies to spend 5% of GDP on defence. Now, Britain has said that that's going to happen. In fact, most countries have. But in reality, that is many, many years away, and that is going to be very, very painful for us when and if it ever happens.
Thank you, Catherine Forster. Superb there, live from Munich. Thanks for your efforts all day and indeed all this week. You've been superb. Thank you, Catherine. Let's get back to studio now for some reaction. I'm joined by Reform UK's London mayoral candidate, Layla Cunningham. Layla, you were watching that report there and simply shaking your head. I mean, it just seems to a lot of people that every time there's a crisis back home, the natural instinct of our Prime Minister is to clear off abroad.
Well, I find it quite galling that he's going to talk about defence and security when we don't have defence at home. You know, we have illegal migrants arriving every day. People don't feel safe on the streets, and he's doing absolutely zero to address that. You know, safety and sovereignty starts at home. And I think you know, he just goes there because he's surrounded with globalists who really value global partnerships over national sovereignty. You know, and we have had leaders, Martin, who've given away our sovereignty in the name of global partnerships, and those global partnerships do not protect or do not benefit the people that they're elected to serve. And that's what you're seeing. He's so desperate to get back with the EU and Brexit.
I wonder sometimes if Keir Starmer's calling, if you like, is to be some kind of international diplomat. Perhaps he'd be a better foreign secretary than a prime minister. We've got to be careful, though. He might give away the Isle of Wight or something.
Well, he said he preferred Davos, didn't he, at some point?
Let's get back, if we could, to, meanwhile, while he's away, the left of the party are gathering. Angela Rayner putting the boot in. The Corbynista-led Transport Salaried Staffs Association backing Angela Rayner to get into number 10. Andy Burnham, incredibly, this afternoon announcing the compulsory purchase of privately rented property if the local authority decides it's not decent. This is a dramatic shift to the left.
I mean, it's redistribution of wealth. the state no longer is saying that we will only regulate your property. They're saying if we're not happy with you, we're going to repossess it. If I was a landlord, that would frighten me to death, because who decides what's an acceptable situation or what isn't? And you know what, by the way, I'm a councillor in Westminster. I can tell you that the state of social housing for tenants in Westminster and in other councils in London is abysmal. So I'm wondering, are they going to repossess from their own councils? I mean, you've seen on social media, they've got mould, things are repaired with duct tape when they should be. So I think they just need to look inward first and try and fix social housing, the crisis that we have here and the level that it is.
Can I ask you about another story we've been covering today, and that is Switzerland is planning to have a referendum. This is in their constitution. They can put it to the people about policy matters, not just at general election time, a referendum on capping the country's population size, and the majority of the population who are going to vote say it's a good idea. Should we do something similar here?
Well, I think, listen, when demographic change happens so rapidly, right, and without any democratic consent, which is effectively what's happened here, people feel that change is imposed on them as opposed to chosen, and that feeling of loss of control is very frustrating. And, we are going through the same thing. And I think, let's see how that pans out. But there has to be a cap on immigration. And people consistently vote for that. And governments consistently do the total opposite. At least this is a democratic process in motion. But listen, we had a big referendum on Brexit, and all we have is a government that's trying to frustrate a democratic vote.
100%. Now, Suella Braverman, one of your colleagues, the Reform Party, sat down with Chris Hope, our political editor, and she had this to say about potentially socialist-style policies. Let's take a look at that clip.
These are quite, I would say, socialist policies too. I mean, are you happy with that?
I am, actually. So I think there's actually a case for, if we are serious about reindustrialising our country and a renaissance of our industry, then I do think there is a need for
state
involvement. And our industries, our heavy industries, have been abandoned and unable to compete against, a more powerful and ascendant East. And so I do think there is a very strong case for that, which I support. The benefit will be more jobs. The benefit will be more growth for our economy. And I do think that, radical thinking needs to be, put in place. And I support that policy.
So, Leila Cunningham, critics of Reform UK will say that that's socialism, state control of industry, but surely it's sensible, particularly around things like steel, not to be reliant on China.
Well, exactly. Steel production, water supply to an extent, they're the backbone of industries. And if they fail, then our country fails, and we feel it immediately. And there has to be a serious discussion about when you lose domestic steel, you lose defence capability, and you'll be reliant on China. Steel is essential for defence, energy projects, that's everything. That's not commercial, that's national security. And right now, partly due to net zero, which I find is creating almost a national security energy, because, we're so reliant on countries that are not aligned with us on critical supply chain. So I wouldn't call it socialist, by the way. For instance, Nigel did say, nationalising 50% of the water supply. The water supply is almost... There's no point in having privatisation if it's the taxpayer that feels the burden of the losses and subsidises that company but gets none of the benefits.
Can I ask you about Sir Keir Starmer as a parting shot? How long do you think this can go on for? How long do you think he's got left?
Listen, I think when he had that meeting with MPs, I think if I was him, as ruthless and as unscrupulous as he is, I would say, you want to get rid of me, I'm going to call a snap election and you're all going to lose your job. And I think he can keep that hanging over their heads all the time. I don't know the mechanism with which you can force a change of leadership in the Labour Party. But, he does have that snap election hanging over their head. And if he does call it, they will lose terribly.
And is that the point? This is a government now which is backing him not through loyalty, but through self-preservation.
Yeah, he's a dead man walking. He doesn't have authority. But it just goes down to a fundamental point that it's all about personal ambition and not national ambition. Governments and leaders are very self-serving. It's obvious that such a dysfunctional Labour Party with him at the head is no longer serving the country. and he'll always be trying to avoid backstabbing, and he'll be so focused on that he's not focused on the country. And you know what I find frustrating, actually, I was discussing this, is the mainstream media, all they report are on these internal party politics. You know, in Prime Minister's questions, we see both parties really arguing about themselves and their parties. But there is such a bigger scandal at play, and that is the lack of delivery and the overspending that our government's doing to this country. And the mainstream media really have to do a deep forensic dive into that. And that, for me, is the scandal. You know, for me, the scandal is the highest taxation since World War II. People can't buy homes. The borders are porous, they can't stop illegal migration, but somehow the press and everyone is so focused on which civil servant got fired, it doesn't make any difference to people's lives.
Please stick with us. I'm going to bring my next guest today. I might respond off the back of this. I'm joined by the former Labour councillor, Simon Greaves. Simon, welcome to the show. It's a pleasure to have your company. I'll ask you the same question, Simon, that I just asked Layla Cunningham. How long can this charade go on for? How long can Sir Keir Starmer last?
Well, Keir Starmer's the Prime Minister. There's a general election in a few years' time. I would say that's a starting point in reality.
You think he'll get through to the next general election?
Well, that's the position of the Labour Party. That's the basis upon which he was elected leader of the Labour Party. There's been a huge amount of support shown by Cabinet. Cabinet, I think it's one person referred to this week as looked over the edge. People looked over the edge. No, they don't want to change. They want to continue support the Prime Minister and get on with things.
Well, I wonder if it's something else, Simon Greaves. It's not they looked over the edge and say we don't want to change. It's like, well, they looked over the edge and thought, I don't want to be on the dole. The fact of the matter is, if it was put to the election now, every opinion poll going would have the Labour Party eviscerated, almost down to extinction level. This is the party not backing the Prime Minister through loyalty, but because of their job security.
No, it's backing the Prime Minister, general election in a number of years' time. And to be honest, if you look at the polls, yes, they are terrible. Yes, there's a lot of work for Labour to do. And to be honest, there's a lot of work for the Conservative Party to do because they are not in a good place either, to be honest.
Simon, I think you're right. In fact, when we look at the elections overnight, Labour Party just being pummeled in Peterborough, absolutely torn into, the Conservative vote also collapsing. Isn't that another huge problem for the Labour Party? And the vote is just being splintered to the right with Reform UK, to the left with the Green Party. We're seeing a death of the two big parties, aren't we?
Well, that's going to be the ongoing argument over the next few months. And there'll be lots of debate about that. But we've seen parties emerge in the past. The SDP actually did a lot better than Reform UK at one point. And that didn't really end very happily for them. So there's a lot that's yet to go in terms of the polls. Every week there'll be a new opinion poll come out, which will be very challenging until the party and the government turns a corner.
Simon, as Sir Keir Starmer has kind of strolled off to Munich on his 46th trip abroad as Prime Minister, his 6th to Germany. At this rate, he'll be a dual national. On a serious point, the Labour Party is on manoeuvres. The tacking towards the left seems to be the direction of travel. Angela Rayner, Andy Burnham today saying the future of Britain could be the compulsory purchase of private housing to take it to the state. Simon, that's communism.
Well, I don't believe it would be that would happen at all, to be honest. But I can see arguments where landlords who don't sort out their housing, it gets to the end of the tether and there's mechanisms to get it sorted out. Some of the rented housing in the country is in a terrible condition. And if landlords don't meet the right standards, there's mechanisms to force them to do so. Why not have other mechanisms to get them to get their act together?
Well, because it's state-sanctioned theft of private property. It's communism.
And if you look at the high street, there's landlords that have high street retail premises where they're being forced to let them out, forced to go to the local authorities to get the ball rolling and get them tenanted again. A lot of these properties are stood empty and they shouldn't be. A lot of them are in a bad shape.
That's because of like punitive tax. It's because of being forced out of business by employment rates, by business rates, by VAT. The high street's being annihilated. It's got nothing to do with who owns the properties. It's about the fact nobody can afford to own them.
And a lot of properties are sat there, I'm afraid, and they need sorting out. Same as rental property. If it's not of the right standard, get it sorted out. And if not, there's rules. There could be more action to get it dealt with.
OK, Simon Greaves, thanks for joining us. I always appreciate your company. I sincerely do on this Friday. Final word, if I could, to you, Lady Cunningham, listening in there. I think people need to be clear on this. When a government says we can decide if your house is satisfactory or not, and if it's not, we're going to buy it.
It is communism.
That is a far left form. That's like Cuba.
Yeah, I mean, we fundamentally in Britain, we believe in property rights. You buy your property, it is yours. You put all your money into that. It is not up to the state in any way and in any situation to threaten repossession. It's never happened in our country. The thing is, who do Labour think they are? They want to take our property, cancel jury trials, digital ID, sanction what we say. It's a massive government overreach from this government. And, you're right, it is communist. But they are communists, really.
Well, not for the moment, perhaps. But look, Leyla Cunningham, what a time to be alive. Thanks for joining us. London Mayor candidate for Reform UK, Leyla Cunningham, thanks for your time today in Westminster. Now, don't go anywhere because we've got a debate after the break. The votes for 16-year-old bill has finally been introduced to Parliament, but it's giving 16-year-olds the votes. Really a good idea. And anyway, could the Labour Party get bitten on the bum by the left going towards the Greens? That's next on GB News, Britain's #1 news channel.
Britain deserves a newsroom that puts the facts and your voice first.
Well, and that's what you get on GB News. Lively debates, lively conversation.
And we're not afraid to hold power to account.
And each other. So join me, Andrew Pierce.
And me, Miriam Gates, for Britain's Newsroom, weekdays from 9:30 on GB News.
Bold.
They are under no illusion.
Ray.
Are you a human trafficker?
Boundless. I've had enough of the nonsense, and I'm not afraid to say it.
Don't get this on the BBC.
Every weeknight, I tear through the headlines.
The smell of gasoline. Should we be worried about it?
From Westminster madness to cultural war chaos.
What I'm going to do now, they are throwing things out the car as we speak.
Get ready, Britain. Here we go. Patrick Christie tonight, weeknights from 9 p.m, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
At GB News, we love to hear from you, our loyal community. So drop us a line at gbnews.com/yoursay. There you can talk to each other and also to the presenters live on air. gbnews.com/yoursay, because GB News is your channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and my show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation,
no,
isn't it?
No,
Because the failure is...
You're deliberately avoiding my point. Nothing's held back.
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
And we do not shy away from the difficult stuff. Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood. So join me on Jubes & Co. weeknights at 6 p.m, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Nana Akwe, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, he didn't say that, Dave.
I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Mornings don't have to be tiresome, especially if you have the right company.
Wake up to news as it happens, opinion and debate, and of course, a little bit of entertainment too.
Because when the kettle's on, we're on.
That's Breakfast on GB News, a show worth waking up for.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We'll spread the news, you spread the word.
Decisions made in Washington aren't just shaping America, they're shaping Britain too. From migration to global security, from crime to health. Whatever happens in the White House today
will be felt in your town or city tomorrow.
That's why The Late Show is live from Washington, D.C.
Cutting through the politics to show you what it all means for Britain.
The Late Show live every night at midnight.
Only on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
It's 5:27 now. When a person turns 16, they can leave school, they can work full-time, they can get married, and of course, they can legally fornicate. But if this Labour government gets its way, then 16-year-olds will also be allowed to vote in future general elections. Legislation to lower the voting age was introduced in Parliament yesterday. But is it a good idea? Well, let's have a ding-dong. I'm now joined by Harry Quilter-Pinner, who's the Executive Director at the Institute for Public Policy Research, and also the political commentator and the podcaster Sunil Sharma. Welcome to the show, gentlemen. It's a pleasure to have your company. Harry, I'm going to start with you. If you're barely legally old enough to fornicate, you're not old enough to drive, surely we shouldn't be trusting the future of this fine nation to children.
Well, I mean, as you've just highlighted, you know, when people turn 16, they can start to contribute to the economy, they can pay tax, they can work, they can join the military. And the idea behind democracy is that if you're contributing, if you're under the laws of the land, that you get a say on how those laws are formed. And so I think the idea behind this is to try and empower young people to rejuvenate a culture of voting, because we're seeing voting turnout rates declining, and doing that at a time when kids are largely still in school, and therefore there's an opportunity to talk about why you might vote, civic education in schools, so that there's a kind of level playing field to start off with. So I think it could be a really positive shift.
Sunil Sharma, let's bring you in now. A lot of people are saying that the Labour Party are doing this in a kind of desperate attempt to try and tilt the playing field in their direction, because the theory goes younger people are more likely to vote left, perhaps because they've been indoctrinated with left-wing politics all the way through school. Do you think that's the reason they're doing it, to try and give votes back towards a party that's struggling at the polls?
Yeah, 100%. They know the likelihood that a 16-year-old would vote for them is only going to help them. They're not. They would not be making this law if they thought most 16-year-old would be voting Conservative or Reform. We basically know it because this is a fairly new policy. Look, if a legal adult starts at 18 years old, and if you, as a 16-year-old, you can't sit on a jury, you're not old enough to decide the government. And yet we can take the argument that they can pay taxes and they're financially responsible, but the vast majority of 16-year-olds do not contribute tax in any meaningful sense. They have limited independence. Most 16-year-olds still live at home. They're financially dependent on their parents, their guardians. The idea that this would reflect independent judgment and not either a household opinion or a school opinion is laughable. You know, national elections are high stakes. It will determine the next prime minister, define policy, taxation, long-term planning. You know, these are at the same age, these 16-year-olds are choosing their GCSE subjects, and they'll be next choosing the people who are going to go. It makes no sense. And to me, it's just a pure tactic because of how poorly they're doing polling-wise, that they can attract this new potential population of people that will vote for them.
Harry, let me put to you one of the concerns about this, and that is this feeling that, let's be frank, you know, the vast majority of teachers, I think it's like 80% of teachers vote towards the political left. There's a danger, is there not, that they might start seeing young minds as projects to be shaped, projects to be formed, votes in waiting to be harvested. This is leaving young minds open to the formulation into voters of the left. It could be abuse, could it not?
I will respond to that, but I just wanted to comment on this claim that, you know, all young people are going to vote for the Labour Party. I think if that's the intention of the Labour Party, they might well be sorely mistaken. You know, the evidence is that younger people, younger men are thinking about voting for Reform. There's a large chunk that might vote more on the right, and that young women might vote more on the left in terms of the Greens. So if it's an act of partisanship, I'm not sure it's going to work. And so I think parties are really going to have to compete to try and get this to get young people to vote for them, and that's exactly as it should be. To speak to your question, look, I think we can start to distrust teachers, but the evidence is that most teachers go into the profession for exactly the right reasons, which is to support young people to thrive. There's no evidence that teachers have got some secret plot to indoctrinate kids to vote in certain ways. I think we should be having a conversation.
Well, hang on. I've got a 16-year-old. My missus is a teacher. You know, I'll put this politely, so I don't get divorced when I go home tonight. Most teachers are woke. Most teachers are woke. Most teachers are of the political left. They believe in open borders, ostensibly. They believe in unionisation. They're parts of very powerful unions. They are politically of the left. But they just absolutely are. If you look at the voting patterns of the major unions like the NEU, it is like sort of 80% towards the left. And they're going further to the left. They're going, you're exactly right, to the Green Party. So schools are political. Education is political. You're not concerned that that could influence the way that kids vote? Because I am.
I'm concerned that we are not having a conversation in parallel about votes at 16, about what type of civic education we should want in schools. We should be encouraging schools to have conversations about politics. That should not be about telling kids who to vote for, but it should be about helping kids to think about what kind of society do they want? What do they care about? Where do they get their information?
Harry, I've got to get to the news, but I want to give you the final word, if I could there. Sunil Sharma, do you think this is an experiment with young minds that we shouldn't be entering into?
100%. It's an experiment. And talking about political and how early political ideology starts with school, we have children in primary school who are taught that a red crayon can identify as a blue crayon. I mean, the left-leaning ideology is indoctrinated schools. Teachers are more on the left-leaning, and there's lots of reasons for it. I think one of the reasons is you have seen declining amount of people having children. Teachers are becoming mums. They're becoming a lot more than just teachers.
Gentlemen, I'm being told we've got to move on. A fantastic debate. Thank you very much for your time, both of you. Harry Kulitapena, thank you very, very much. And Sunil Sharma, thank you. And have a fantastic weekend, gentlemen. Thank you very much. There's loads more still to come between now and 6 p.m. Now, it's estimated that the UK economy is losing £100 billion a year to money laundering. Why the authorities finding this such a difficult problem to grapple with? I'll be joined by the author of a book. It's called How to Launder Money. But for now, if you're travelling home from work or from school, stay safe. Here's your traffic and your travel update. We'll see you soon.
Good afternoon, this is the latest AI travel news from GBNews.com. On the M25 clockwise, a crash between junction 19 and junction 20 has one lane closed and delays of around 30 minutes. On the M1 northbound exit slip at junction 34, a broken down vehicle has 2 lanes blocked. The M4 westbound is slow from junction 23A at Mega to junction 26 at Malpass. And on the trains, Southern has major disruption between Hove and Worthing, plus delays between East Croydon and Clapham Junction, while Avanti West Coast is disrupted between Milton Keynes Central and Watford Junction. For more travel news, go to gbnews.com.
Good afternoon. Your headlines at 5:35. Sir Keir Starmer is attending the Munich Security Conference today, where the German Chancellor has warned that world order as we know it no longer exists. Officials will discuss the top issues facing the world in 2026, including the transatlantic alliance and Europe's security architecture. Back in the UK, 2 men responsible for a plot to murder as many Jews as possible in Manchester have been sentenced to life in jail after they were found guilty of preparing attacks between December 2023 and May 2024. Meanwhile, police have stopped arresting Palestine Action supporters despite a terror ban on the group remaining in force. It's after the High Court ruled the group's prescription was unlawful, a decision the government will appeal. And The Telegraph is reporting that Lord Mandelson has been summoned to appear before Congress to testify about his relationship with Jeffrey Epstein. Those are your headlines for now. More news at the top of the hour.
Tune in to GB News Radio wherever you are. Online, on DAB digital radio, on TuneIn, on Radio Player, on Nation Player and on your smart speaker. Just say, play GB News.
Hello again, I'm here with your GB News weather update coming to you from the Met Office. It's pretty wet out there for many of us at the moment, but something drier and sunnier is on the cards for tomorrow. Worth noting, as well as the sunnier weather though, we're going to see a slight drop in our temperatures. That's because we're going to get colder air feeding its way downwards from the north. Now that colder air is already across parts of Scotland and Northern Ireland, so a chilly feel here and a cold start to the night with often clear skies but some wintry showers coming into some northern and eastern parts towards the north. Further south, cloudy to start the night with the rain then clearing away, allowing for clearer skies to develop. And with those clear skies and that colder air, for many, temperatures dropping below freezing just towards the south, just about staying above. But we could see temperatures in parts of Scotland getting as low as -10 Celsius. So very cold, frosty, icy start to the day for many of us tomorrow morning. Widespread ice, could be a bit more snow in some places as well, so that could cause some problems first thing. Also an ice risk across Northern Ireland and much of England and Wales as well. But all the while there will be a lot of bright sunny weather to be had. Towards the south, less of an ice risk here. There could be some around, but even so, there could be some frost in places as well. So plenty of sunshine on offer first thing tomorrow morning, perhaps just a bit more cloud towards the east. However, as we go through the day, some high-level clouds going to push its way in from the west, so that sunshine is going to turn a bit milky, a bit hazy perhaps, before some wet weather arrives from the west later on. Temperatures are going to be markedly down compared to of late, but with that sunshine, well, it's going to feel relatively pleasant. Many of us have been crying for some sunshine recently. Then as we go through the evening, as I mentioned, we have some wet and windy weather coming in, and that's going to bring some hill snow, particularly across northern and eastern parts as we go overnight into Sunday. More changeable weather to come as we go into next week. Whatever you're up to, enjoy the rest of your day.
Westminster's full of talk, but out here, it's the real world.
Am I allowed to talk then?
No, that's it. This is where it matters, real people and real lives. That's what politics is all about.
In fact, this Trump made a good start. No.
Straight answers, no spin, and just a couple of pints.
How many fingers have I got up?
About 10. So join me for Lee Anderson's Real World every Friday at 7 p.m. only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
You want to know what's really going on in the corridors of power? Labour don't know what to do with you half the time, and that makes you quite lethal in the chamber. Get behind the headlines with Chopper's Political Podcast. Join me, Christopher Hope, as I sit down with the great and the good of British politics. We'll see where this ruling takes us. These are the stories shaping our nation. Chopper's Political Podcast, available now on all platforms. Listen in and stay ahead.
Welcome back, it's 5:39. We've got some major breaking news to bring you now, and it is this. It's broken this past few moments. Another terrible Friday for Lord Mandelson. It's now been reported he's been summoned to appear before Congress to testify about his relationship with the paedophile Jeffrey Epstein. This time last week, his two houses were raided, one in Wiltshire, one in London. This is another terrible Friday for Lord Mandelson, who's been summoned to appear before Congress to testify about his relationship with Jeffrey Epstein. Now, the Telegraph says the House Democrats sent a letter to Mandelson today which called on him to give evidence to the Oversight Committee as part of their investigation into the paedophile. Now, Mandelson has denied, of course, any wrongdoing. That's a major breaking news story. We'll be covering it, no doubt, throughout the rest of the day. Now, moving on. Money laundering is a huge problem around the world, and it's claimed that the UK could be home to more than £100 billion of money laundering each and every year. Now, a new book out today has shone a light on the problem and also outlined what authorities should be doing all about it. And I'm delighted now to be joined in the studio in Westminster by the co-author of the book, and that's Lawrence Burke-Files. And that book is called How to Launder Money, a guide for law enforcement, prosecutors and policy makers. Lawrence, it's a pleasure to have you come in the studio.
Thank you very much
for coming in. So, I should point out, to help ease our lawyers, that this book here is not actually about how to launder money. It's the process of how it's done and how we can stop it. Now, Lawrence, this matters hugely to our viewers because they see their own high streets riddled with Turkish barbershops, vape shops, chicken shops, which clearly is a front to money laundering. If they can see it, why can't the coppers see it?
Well, it comes to a point of being aware. I mean, the idea behind this book is an anatomy of how money is laundered, so that, like a physician studies anatomy, the enforcement should study the anatomy of money laundering and then become more aware of where it's happening and how it's working.
So how does it work? So if you're doing something illicit and you want to make that money clean, let's take a British high street. How do they do it?
It's quite easy. You can have, for example, a ghost store. You have one legitimate store and you have one illegitimate store. You take in £10,000 a day in this store, and it's a legitimate store, and this ghost store over here also takes in £10,000. If the financial institution ever makes an inquiry about this, they use the records from the other one to show that it's a real store.
And that might help to explain the sudden upspringing of all these shops across our high streets. In terms of the international scope of this, it's a global problem and it's a massive industry.
It's enormous. It's estimated at 5% of GDP of the world's GDP. That's an enormous amount of money, and it flows everywhere. People look at offshore financial centers and say, oh, it's always going there. The money laundering is happening in the world's financial capitals. It's happening in London, New York, Tokyo. It's happening where the money is.
And if banks get in trouble, they can just pay the fine and move on, right?
Well, the point is, no one is hurt in that fine except for the shareholders, because does a bank officer get fined and pay a fine? No. The bank is fine. The bankers can work and trade on risk and get their quarterly bonuses, and if it blows up, they get their bonuses and the shareholders and everyone else gets to pay the fine.
Is there any way, we talk often about the war on drugs, the war on human trafficking. Is it simply a war that's too big for the authorities to win?
The way it's being done right now, not only is it too big for them to win, but the laws are so draconian, it's beginning to impact you and I. We go to open up a bank account, it takes forever. I was actually at one time part of a company helping draft the laws for the anti-money laundering laws in Pakistan. What happened? The account was frozen because it was getting money from suspicious jurisdictions and going to other ones. They didn't bother looking at all the paperwork I'd supplied them in advance.
And meanwhile, it's going to be rolling on and on. Do you see any end to the consumption of British high streets by these ghost businesses?
Not at this point in time, no. I don't see any type of improvement anywhere. You have barbers and chicken shops in London, and we have nail salons, massage parlors, and taco stores.
Yeah, it's around the world, it's all over the shop. But
yes,
look,
it is.
It's a fascinating book, How to Launder Money by George Cottrell and Lawrence Burke Files. There it is. I got myself a copy last night. Thank you very much indeed for your company in the studio, Lawrence. Thank you. Now moving onwards, coming up next, Palestine Action has won a High Court challenge today following its ban. How has this happened? What does that mean now for Britain's Jewish community? I'll be joined by the government's former anti-terror czar. But meanwhile, if you're searching of some holiday sun this year, then here's a forecast of some of the top European destinations.
Dinner under the stars tonight?
That reminds me of our travel insurance.
You mean All Clear Skies?
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News travel destinations forecast.
Having seen so much stormy weather across parts of Western Europe recently, finally a change is on the way. It's still windy this weekend in Spain, Portugal and across much of Italy. Spells of rain moving in here, reaching eventually parts of Greece and Croatia. But it is looking drier and brighter for much of Spain and Portugal despite that strong wind. And that steady improvement continues into next week. Still breezy with showers around, but not as stormy as it has been.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News travel destinations forecast.
Britain deserves a newsroom that puts the facts and your voice first.
Well, and that's what you get on GB News. Lively debates, lively conversation.
And we're not afraid to hold power to account.
And each other. So join me, Andrew Pierce.
And me, Miriam Gates, for Britain's Newsroom, weekdays from 9:30 on GB News.
At GB News, we love to hear from you, our loyal community. So drop us a line at gbnews.com/yoursay. There you can talk to each other and also to the presenters live on air. gbnews.com/yoursay, because GB News is your channel, Britain's news channel.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
I will show on-day release from the Stormtrooper factory in Drusilla's Park in the south of England. And can you guess who I'm here to see? No, it's not this old grey grizzly chap. In fact, regular viewers of the show will know that I am Britain's biggest beaver lover. And it turns out I'm not the only one. Yes, a new rewilding campaign has been launched, and up and down the country, people are coming out to support it. So I'm here to find out more. Mark, are you the beaver expert here at Drusillus?
I guess I could be. I'm the zoo manager, so I'm the most senior figure in the zoo. I've been working in zoos for over 34 years. So my responsibility is the management and the welfare of the plus 800, 900 animals that we have in the park.
All right, well, that's a lot of animals, but tell me, please, about your beaver.
So the beavers are particularly special. We have had beavers in the collection for 35, 40 plus years. They're hugely popular with our visitors. They're hugely popular within our industry. Professionals alike like to come to Drusillus to see the beavers.
Very exciting. Well, thank you so much.
Thank you. Thanks a lot.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Join me, Nana Akwe, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, he didn't say that, Dave.
I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
It's 5:49. Welcome back. Now, today, the High Court has ruled that the ban of Palestine Action under terrorism legislation is actually unlawful. Now, the judges ruled that the ban must remain in place until the next hearing on the 20th of February, when that takes place. Now, the Home Secretary, Shabana Mahmood, expressed her disappointment at the decision, adding that the government will almost certainly appeal the High Court's decision today. What does this mean for Britain? What does it mean for Britain's Jewish community? Well, I'm delighted now to speak with the former UK government's independent advisor on political violence, Lord Walleney. Lord Walleney, it's always a delight to have your company. And when this story came out, I wanted really to get your take on so much to talk about. It's almost certainly going to get appealed. This was the Vet Cooper's decision. Shabana Mahmood is going to have to go against it. But put all that to one side, are you concerned this emboldens the pro-Gaza mob that have been on the streets for over 2 years now, and this is basically saying it's fine, as you were?
Yeah, it is really concerning that is the message that is going to go out to these far-left activists from this verdict. And you can see they are openly, wildly celebrating about this. It does send the message that you can get away with this kind of stuff, and effectively you can hold the country to ransom with these criminal sabotage tactics and violence, and your organisation can get away with it. It is a really perverse judgment. I'm surprised by a number of elements of it, and it's good that the Home Secretary has confirmed that she will appeal this, and I'm hoping that common sense ultimately is going to prevail, because one of the arguments that was made was that, well, the terrorism, the group had committed terrorist acts, but they thought not sufficient to be banned. I think that's a very strange legal ruling, because it seems to suggest that some level of terrorism makes it okay for the government, for an organisation to continue as it was. And then the other very strange part of the ruling was to suggest that the placing a prescription on an organisation, despite acknowledging that it was engaged in serious criminal acts, would have a chilling effect on free speech. And I just think the vast majority of people in this country, they understand that you can speak out about something but you can't commit criminal acts in support of a cause.
Lord Morning, we've got a quick 30 seconds left. I want to ask you a direct question. Is this ruling today, do you think it's made Britain safer or less safe for Jewish people?
I think it does. It does make the country less safe if it is upheld, and that certainly is keenly felt, perceived by Jewish people and communities who are absolutely up in arms about this. So let's hope that the appeal works.
Lord Morning, it really is a chilling time to be in Britain, but thank you for your common sense as ever. Thanks for joining us. I really appreciate your time. Now, that's all from me this week. It's been fabulous. Thanks for all your time. Up next is due to go with the magnificent Nana Aquia. Nana, what's on your menu?
Well, thank you, Martin. I'll just say a happy Valentine's for tomorrow, but can you believe it? In Crowborough, a Green Party councillor is planning to take her kids to the barracks in Crowborough and give these illegal migrants some Valentine's cards. I mean, you just couldn't make this up. Plus, of course, Palestine Action, no longer a proscribed terrorist group. And those two men who thought that they were going to go and slaughter Jews are rightly in prison for life. We'll be discussing all of that after the weather.
Today, clouds overhead, total zen within. Boxed Solar sponsors the weather on GB News.
Hello again, I'm here with your GB News weather update coming to you from the Met Office. It's pretty wet out there for many of us at the moment, but something drier and sunnier is on the cards for tomorrow. Worth noting, as well as the sunnier weather though, we're going to see a slight drop in our temperatures. That's because we're going to get colder air feeding its way downwards from the north. Now that colder air is already across parts of Scotland and Northern Ireland, so a chilly feel here and a cold start to the night with often clear skies but some wintry showers coming into some northern and eastern parts towards the north. Further south, cloudy to start the night with the rain then clearing away, allowing for clearer skies to develop. And with those clear skies and that colder air for many, temperatures dropping below freezing just towards the south, just about staying above. But we could see temperatures in parts of Scotland getting as low as -10 Celsius. So very cold, frosty, icy start to the day for many.